All right, everyone, we're going to get going here. It is 9:04 a.m. on Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, and I am now going to call to order a special meeting of the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees. Clerk Rodriguez, can you please do roll call?
Yes, Madam President. Vice President Mayberry. Trustee Nicolette.
Good morning.
I'm here. President Smith.
Here.
Trustee Westlake.
Here.
Trustee Woodley.
Here.
Trustee Church.
Here.
And our student representative, I believe, is in class. Madam President, we got quorum.
Thank you. She is in class. All right, there's a lot of people that help us ensure that we rise to the call of using taxpayer dollars in the most responsible way. And one of those people is in this room. She's been with this district for many, many years, and she is the backbone upon which this team, our procurement team, has been pretty much elected to the Procurement Hall of Fame in America many times over. Andrea Sullivan, will you please lead us in the pledge? And now I'll move on to item 104, our land acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in the hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We acknowledge that some of our educational structures are situated in their traditional homelands of the Washoe, Washoe, Newmoo, Northern Paiute, Niwi, Western Shoshone, and Niuwu, Southern Paiute peoples. We pay respect to their elders past and present. These lands continue to be a gathering place for Indigenous people, and we recognize their deep connections to these places. We extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live and learn in their territory. All right, thank you, everyone. That closes item 1.04 and section 1 in its entirety. And now we'll move on to section 2. This is our main area for consideration today in this special meeting. Our first item for section 2 is 201, and this is the discussion and possible action to provide direction to staff regarding the process for selecting the superintendent of schools for the Washoe County School District, including consideration of timeline for hiring, the scope of recruitment efforts, local, regional, or national, and search facilitator options. This is an item for possible action, and we welcome up Kate Shum, our Interim Director of Talent and Employee Services, and Katie Louise Weir, Director of Professional Growth Systems and School Supports. Hello and welcome.
All right, good morning, President Smith, Interim Superintendent McNeil, and our Board of Trustees. We're excited to talk with you about this process. So as we want to ground everything in our upcoming strategic plan, it's important to recognize that we will use our WCSD promise as we work through the search process, really trying to identify our leader who will help us to meet the needs of our students by name, strength, and need. JJ, if you wouldn't mind advancing to the third slide for me. Oh, I have the ability to do it. Oh, great. Okay. All right. So essentially there are multiple phases of our search process, and depending upon whether or not we do that internally or externally, somewhat influences what this looks like. But roughly there's 4 buckets: a kickoff, the preparation phase, the recruitment, screening, and selection, and then the hiring phase. If we do elect to go with a vendor, then of course they will guide us through this process, and we will develop a much more concrete and explicit timeline of what that would exactly look like. But these are essentially the largest buckets that we would accomplish in order to be able to offer and onboard a new superintendent. So as we look at that, there's essentially two big lanes of consideration, which would be a firm or our district staff. And then we did break that down into local and national, although at this time there weren't any local firms that were interested should we move forward with a vendor. But I think it is important to still keep that as a part of your consideration. And then we broke it into different aspects of what that search might look like. So you'll see timeline considerations, constituent input, the scope of the search, the candidate screening, interview selection process, estimated cost, and then essentially an other category that would encompass other portions of the search process. So really, as you'll see, there's a different level of service and resources depending upon which lane we choose to go in, whether it be a vendor who helps us through this process or our own district staff. And then finally, we have a very broad overview of what this timeline would look like, depending upon whether or not we do this internally or externally would, of course, influence our ability to meet this timeline. But our goal, and I think your goal as well, is to have our superintendent start this summer in July. So essentially, today would be determining the facilitator, whether that's an internal facilitator here or an external facilitator through a vendor. And then to get rolling on that process in very early February to begin narrowing that down, the screening, interview process, compensation range, all of that. To move into our recruitment phase, interview selection, contract negotiations, onboarding, and then ultimately the start for the superintendent. So that, in a nutshell, is an overview of what we would like for you all to consider today, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. A couple details, and I know Trustee Church has some questions on this as well. So when we were in this situation a couple years ago, we ended up using a local consultant that we found through a national search, is a good way to describe it. And I know that there were some questions about that. And so when we did work with that group a couple years ago, their total costs in that area based on their fee and then the additional expenses came in at just over $50,000, just so everyone knows. So it's definitely accurate that the costs initially can be lower, but that the overall cost of that local consultant, the way that it actually came out after the invoicing was just over $50,000. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. So there's a few things to consider here with the district staff versus using a local consultant or a national firm. And one of those important details is the process. So whenever the board is directing district staff, this part is really important because it's unique to Nevada law. And that means that when the board decides to do this themselves, which we can do, it means literally everything we do is in a public meeting. I'm talking like 4 meetings a week, folks. We would have to direct staff on how to create the application, who we would have in our stakeholder groups. Every single application would need to be public. There's no privacy whatsoever. And that's Nevada law. So I want to be really clear to anybody who's watching this. This is not just because the Washoe County School District would want to be so micromanagey like that. It's state law. And so those are really important differences. Can absolutely be done that way. I just want to make sure that my colleagues fully understand what that looks like when we're actually driving it and then using district staff for that. So I'll just kind of leave that right out there. Whereas one of the benefits of using either a local consultant or a national firm is that we direct them on what it is that we are looking for. We hold them to servicing us based on the direction that we give and that the community gives in the stakeholder feedback process. but that they're actually able to manage the search process outside of that because the board is not receiving the applications or doing those first stages of interviews and reduction in the, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the reduction, it's as candidates move through the process in advance. The local consultant or the agency does that for us. We actually don't get to weigh in. We have to trust that we've given the right direction so that they're actually narrowing the candidate pools in alignment with our direction. And then it's not until the finalists are named that those people become public, and they're also publicly noticed, and they fully understand that now their identities would be known to the public. And then at that point, the board gets involved, and then everything we do from that point forward is done in public. So I just really wanted to outline that as a reminder to our community, not just how we operate, but how Nevada law is, and just as a reminder, including for our newer trustees as well. Is there anything you would want to touch on about some key differences there, just factually, before any of my other colleagues have some questions? No? Okay. Then I did a good job. All right, Trustee Church, I know you had a question, so jump on in.
Sure. Well, I have a lot of comments in response to what you said, but what I'm about to say may change everything. And I was in Memphis, Tennessee in an ice storm, got a cold, wasn't feeling well, didn't do my homework till last night, till yesterday. So I sincerely apologize for my bringing this up at the last minute. And I don't like to sound like Perry Mason, like the old TV show, but I got to try to ask some direct questions. Are you familiar, because you folks are relatively, or you're new, I think, the contract we had with the Bryan?
Nobody's new.
Okay.
Nobody's new.
With the contract we had with the Bryan Group?
Yes, we are.
Okay. In that, on page 22, at the very top, item 4, it talks about if the superintendent leaves within 2 years from the date of the contract, they will honor research for free, only charging us for expenses. She left after she gave her resignation, citing 9B, which is a standard 6-month notice, no medical, no illness, no disability, just the normal 6-month notice. And at that point, had 1 year, 9 months. It seems to me indisputable that the Bryan Group should be the one for free, other than expenses, to conduct the research to save us $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000. So can you comment on that?
I'll take that one if that's okay. Yes, so the contract that we'd signed with the Bryan Group did have that provision in it. And so how to say this, that would be predicated on this board's interest in wanting to work with them again. We appreciate the work that they did, and this board could certainly decide as a whole to do that again. But based on that experience and the level of effort that was involved from this board and also the district, a more full service experience has been preferred. But you are right that we could go back to the Bryan Group and do that again, but that would just be a reminder that we would then get that experience again because we know how that process went. Personally, based on the feedback and the experience, we wanted to bring to the colleagues a more full service experience with a different professional level that was different than what we had in the last search. But so the short answer is yes, we could go back to the Bryan Group and engage with them again, but then we would have them again.
Okay, if I can address that. First of all, unless there's some internal polling I'm not aware of, I'm not aware that we made any decision. This is the first I knew about it. This is an open meeting. unless it was something behind closed doors I'm not aware of.
No.
Okay.
Nothing was behind closed doors.
Okay.
We're deciding this right now, and the
Okay.
fact that you didn't do your homework until last night is definitely not. We are making this decision right now,
Okay.
and everybody who entered into that contract is aware of this because it's a public document.
Okay.
So we can decide that right now. No backroom meetings, no polling. Nobody has talked about this until really right now.
Okay, I heard the word "we," so I might have, I have my hearing aids in, but I might have
No,
misunderstood.
you would have to use them again. If we went back to the Bryant Group and we activated this provision, we would have to use them again.
Okay. Moving along on that, first of all, the Bryant Group did reach out to me, and they indicated they did reach out to us, a local firm. Obviously, I sense that there's maybe some that don't want them. My recollection is they gave us 4 excellent candidates, 4 wonderful candidates, and aside from the fact that Dr. Enfield left, she received glowing evaluation last time. We were extremely happy with the Bryant Group. If you look at the minutes of the meeting or the meeting itself, we praised the Bryant Group for what they did. So I understand there may be a desire to move in a new direction. That's not my desire. I was very happy with the Bryant Group, since free is good versus, say, $50,000 of taxpayer money. If we were to proceed with the Bryant Group and they didn't perform to our standards with the candidates they gave us, granted it would cost us a little bit of time if they didn't give us good candidates, but at that point that we can say no, we're going to go with another firm. But to just say no, we're not going to do the Bryant Group, and again, we praised them at the time. I'm kind of taken aback at the new position, but I mean, I'm prepared to make a motion to go with the Bryant Group if that's appropriate.
Well, first let's do public comment. So that's going to be the next step in the process. JJ, do we have any public comment on this?
Gordon Gossage.
Hi, Mr. Gossage.
Good morning, Gordon Gossage with Regenesis Reno, and it's interesting the conversation that just happened. Yesterday, I kind of looked at what executive search firms are involved with school superintendents, and then fairly quickly, you know, McPherson came up, and Ray and Associates, and HYA. You know, they're leading firms in executive search. And I don't know much about executive search for school districts. I know a lot about executive search in the private sector, as both a consumer of those services and knowing people who were always recruiting me. And the reason you hire an executive search firm is not to research to get candidates. I mean, you can put out, you know, something online that says, hey, we're looking for somebody. What an executive search firm does is that they find you candidates who are not looking. Okay, because they're always talking to everybody. And like in many professions in sales, they're solution sellers. So there could be somebody in Chicago who has been kind of thinking of looking somewhere else, and they've been talking, you know, for a year. And then the recruiter comes in and says, hey, I have this opportunity in Reno. It's this great place. It's a perfect fit for you. And then finally, out of the 100 people that she speaks to on a regular basis, they say, yes, okay, Reno sounds good. Tell me about Reno. You know, so we need people who are not looking for a job. We need people who don't know what Reno is. They get us confused with Vegas, and, you know, they think we must be like Salt Lake, or God knows what they think. And so an executive search recruiter will be so good at really widening the candidate pool. You know, the Bryant Group, and I did a little research on them. You know, they started in 2019. They're basically evaluators, you know, and you guys will be able to do a good job with the evaluation, and they can help you do that. But what you can't do is you can't go running around the country looking for people who are not looking for a job. You just can't do that. You got to hire somebody. And in terms of the money, I think you should spend at least $100,000. I mean, generally the going rate for executive search in the private sector is 30%. So you hire somebody for $300, you know, it's $100,000. And really, and think of the $100,000. Please don't think of it as the taxpayers' money. It's better if it's $50,000 versus $100,000. Think of it another way. You're going to spend $12 for every employee in this organization in order to get them a good boss. $12 for each employee. This is great money. It's a great use of $100,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gossage.
Paul White.
Hi, Mr. White, welcome.
I appreciate Jeff Church bringing this information forward. I would really question the claim that everybody knew about it. Talked to another board member this morning. They didn't know about it. That it's been an open process. There was quite a detailed series of articles in the Gazette Journal about it. If everybody knew about this, why wasn't that mentioned in the article? Why wasn't that given to the reporter? That the search firm that put a totally unqualified person that they sold to you, that they would offer to do it again if they left too soon. So it's like if we're not owning up to the fact publicly, and it's not transparent. Again, it's like a half-truth. It's right here, and you've got copies of it. They leave within 2 years, and if you didn't want to use that same company, that's fine. Then why wouldn't someone talk to that company behind the scenes and say, well, we're either going to go public with it, or we need some degree of a refund on what we paid you to give us someone who didn't fulfill what you said they had to do, or you'd do it over. So it's not whether you spend $50,000 or $100,000 when your budget is $1.5 billion. It's a matter of, are you just going to be transparent about these things? I mean, what you got from the search firm was someone where our 4 issues that are killing our community, and there's no argument to be made otherwise, are the kids don't show up, half don't show up clean and sober, a huge majority don't have any respect, disrespect, abuse for the teachers, and still again, no one's learning anything. In fact, the scores have gone down still further. And yet, you hired a candidate that had no firsthand experience in ever personally solving one of these problems in one school in her entire career. Now, she'd done a lot of other things in bureaucracy with education, but not that. And so it's like, let's start with being honest. Let's start with just saying, yeah, we need to have a conversation with the Bryant Group and say, even if we don't want to use you, we need some money back, and we need to go public with the fact that, no, we might not want to go with you again. Mr. Church's comment was really good. Why would you maybe want to go a different direction, given those unbelievable rave reviews about a performance of someone who left the district worse in every possible metric? So this is there, and then the only other thing I'd say would be, with this new police chief, don't your requirements say 5 years of supervisory experience and a bachelor's degree? And my understanding is the person you chose has neither one. Let's be transparent if we're going to say that.
Thanks, Mr. White.
Todd Bailey.
Hi, Mr. Bailey.
Good morning. Well, this went from a flawed selection process to a ridiculously flawed selection process. Where is the Bryant Group? Why are they not here today? I mean, I want a public explanation about what happened here. They're the ones who kind of screwed this up for you, embarrassingly so. I want the Bryant Group to bring in a refund check. Where's my money? And if they're willing to do it again, then that's who we should use. It's ridiculous. Who made the decision to exclude the Bryant Group? Is what I think we should all know. You know, in previous superintendent searches here at Washoe County School District, I made the request that the board pass on the $100,000 search firm and use the professionals in the district to conduct the search. Now, the director of HR at the time rushed to the microphone and stated that they would not be comfortable conducting the search for who would eventually be their boss. Except the people who selected the 3 companies that you will consider today, excluding the Bryant Group, were picked by 6 district employees, which is no different than conducting the search themselves. Now let me illustrate that. Let's say, for instance, hypothetical, the staff prefers superintendents who want every school painted red. they would naturally select the search firms that can find candidates who prefer superintendents that are willing to paint every school red. Okay? And magically, just magically, when the candidates for superintendent show up, there's only one obvious candidate in the group that is the most qualified. How did that happen so magically? Well, that's called stacking the deck here in Nevada. And I have personally seen this in this room during a superintendent search. His name was Pedro Martinez. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey.
The board received an email from Vanessa Nelson.
All right. Trustee Church, since you've already had an opportunity, I'm going to go to Trustee Nicolette first.
Thank you, President. Is it time, are you preferring questions right now, or may I make some comments?
Go
some
for it.
thoughts?
All the
Thank you.
things.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here, and I know this is hard work. This is hard work. And I've been part of big searches, and so even outside of Washoe County School District. A couple questions first and then some statements. Can we use data? Do we have the data that the Bryant Group painfully collected at what do we have here, $50,000? Can we use some of that data? It's post-COVID. It's only 2 years old. I think it's still reliable and valid. Number two, a discussion about a temp agency, a local temp agency, to do some of the, what I would call daily paper review and shuffle that can be very tedious and yet is very important. Are there available, did we do any research on seeking input from local facilitation companies to help us facilitate this group while still having our experts in our human resource department, who I trust, and I understand there can be a sense of conflict, but I think we need to get over that because we hire teachers, and a teacher may be your child's teacher. So, conflict is a messy subject. And then I would say that I personally trust, and I mean this sincerely, trust our local professionals to do this work rather than an outside agency. I feel very strongly about that. We spent $77,000 in the last two most current superintendent searches. We ended up, thank goodness, with Dr. McNeil, and she wasn't even top of the list. And the school board at the time made the very intelligent and charismatic decision to hire the right person. I'm not going to say that our last hire was wrong or right. It wasn't successful because it didn't come to a place that was a comfortable end. It was abrupt and quitting-esque. So I really am leaning toward an option 3 that would be a collective work of our HR and other professionals in our school district with local agencies to do a search for us. I trust our local people much more than I do an outside agency. And as you eloquently said in our public comment, these people are out there looking for people who don't maybe even want to come here. I don't want them. Okay, thank you.
If I might invite Chief Legal Counsel Rombardo to jump in. Excellent points brought up with a temp agency or even our own HR department. We would be the ones directing them. So I just want to be clear on that. Maybe Chief Legal Counsel Rombardo can jump in, because that's an important distinguishing factor between some of these options.
Yeah, just the board always has to be cognizant of anytime it's directing from this dais that everything has to be done and open, just like you did here. Contrary to comments, there's no backdoor or anything else going on here. This is a full public discussion, and every decision will have to be done that same way. So it's just, you want to be cognizant of how you want to direct this going forward. It's not a prohibition to doing it that way. It's just we want to be careful and think through how we want to do that.
Good morning, Trustee Nicolette. Katie Louise Weir for the record. Just clarifying, what do you mean by accessible data from the Bryan Group? What are you looking for there?
Yes, data we can access. I'm looking for all the forums they conducted, which I thought were they're very important. There was it was a deep dive into what the community, those who participated, saw for the future with our superintendent, and those things that they didn't want, as it was with all of our employees, anybody who wanted to participate across all employee positions, which I believe is really, really important. We even solicited input from our students, extremely important, and of course our families. So there was copious amounts of data that was collected. I'm not sure where all that resides. I believe we own it, and we can use it again. Thank you for that question.
Thanks for that clarification. I think one of the important considerations here, sorry, Katie Louise Weir for the record, is when we collected the data on that most previous search, our strategic plan was the response to recovery. So while we collected that data post-pandemic, or after the national emergencies had subsided and there weren't the emergency declarations, all of that data was collected based upon a strategic plan we're no longer operating under. We do still have access to that data. And I'd have to verify exactly how we share that in public meeting and make sure we follow all those procedures and protocols. But I do caution us to simply use that data as our only source for what constituents are looking for now. I'm really proud of our strategic plan process. Our communications team did a wonderful job of ensuring that we had a wide variety of constituents, to your point, Trustee Nicolette, who informed our strategic plan process. So I think it's important, no matter which direction we go, that we really strongly consider additional data collection from our constituents in whatever that form may be, because we are operating under a new strategic plan now. We have a different direction, a different guiding light. We're no longer operating in the response to recovery mode. So while we can certainly use that, I think it's also important to remember or consider that that wouldn't be the only piece of data that would help us to make the most informed decision for our selection of superintendent.
Trustee Westlake, followed by Clerk Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Smith. I have a comment. In reading through the three vendors, I think it was the second one, McPherson.
Trustee Westlake, we can't talk about that. That's a different item. So we would just be talking about the conversation at hand, which is what method to choose.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is. They're also have a guarantee. That does not weigh very heavy with me. That's not something I'm concerned with in a vendor. Batter goes up, 3 strikes, you're out, and you're moving on to the next batter. And that's kind of how I feel with this. I did not have the experience of Bradford, but they had their time, and I think it's up to us as a board to direct the company, and we want someone whose aspirations are for this district, not self-aspirations. So it doesn't matter if they're local or not local. We have to make sure that their aspirations is to better and support this district. But I myself do not feel comfortable how this turned out going back to that same group. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Excuse me. I will say one thing, more than half of us not that long ago wanted to cast a wider net and see what we can get. I will also say that in light of that, would be interested, this is just me personally as a single trustee, would like to see some more local or state candidates. But with that, I am ready to make a motion. I move that the Board of Trustees provides direction to staff to conduct a national search for superintendent of schools for the Washington County School District.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Clerk Rodriguez, seconded by Vice President Mayberry. Seeing no lights on.
Oh, I have lights on.
Okay, Trustee Church, do you have a question on the motion?
I have comments on the motion, not a question.
Go for it.
First of all, this stinks. I'm an officer and a gentleman. I got to be as polite as I can, but this goes beyond. First of all, I asked to make a motion. You told me no. This is disparate treatment that goes on and on and on. The Bryan Group is free. The Bryan Group is, according to the Reno Gazette, back when this happened, quote, the trustees praised the group. Suddenly we're not. We praised the superintendent up until the day she resigned. Suddenly we're not. This whole process stinks. I don't know who these three, we can't talk about the three groups yet, but a national process, I don't know who picked those. I wasn't consulted. I concur with Dr. Nicolette that if we don't go with the free Bryan Group, and we have nothing to lose other than time, if we don't go with them, that we do it internally. I agree with that 100% for various reasons. I strongly disagree with the comments about, oh, we have to meet 2 or 3 times a week and open meeting law. I love open meeting law. I love transparency. But in my opinion, if we go with the internal, as we do with, oh, let me pick an example, committee members, those aren't public. Those applications aren't made public to us. I don't see anything that prevents internally from setting up a private committee unrelated to the school district to weed down the finalists, and then the finalists potentially would be, of course, like the last ones, public. But I believe that would be exempt from open meeting law if it was done by a private, independent group. Gave us the finalists. So, no, I was prepared to make a motion. Obviously, I don't count, disparate treatment. I'm putting that on the record. I'm extremely upset with this. I'm an officer and a gentleman. But this entire process, everything I've heard today, stinks. And I feel that leadership, board leadership, is taking us down a primrose path that is unacceptable to me, that is not transparent, and this is just abhorrent. This is just absolutely unconscionable.
Thank you, Trustee Church. Just as a quick point of clarification, all 7 trustees received the information on potential future agenda items at the exact same time as the public, so no trustee at all received the information of who the potential people would be beforehand. I would like to ask Chief Legal Counsel Rombardo to jump in on any of that, particularly related to Nevada open meeting law, just so that we can all be clear on that.
Well, it's very clear that any hiring of a public officer, which the superintendent is, in fact, the superintendents are listed in the statute, must be done in open. So if this board is conducting or appointing a subcommittee, that subcommittee would have to comply with the open meeting law. You don't just get to go out and say, well, I'm picking this person that's a private person from construction, and I'm picking this private person from education, and I'm picking this private person. That's all irrelevant. It's no different than the zoning committee or any other naming committee or anything of that nature. It's a surrogate of this board that disperses taxpayer funds and therefore must comply with the open meeting law. And to add one other thing, as I started this comment, was that anything related to the hiring, firing of a superintendent must be done in open. And I've advised that the last 3 times I've been a part of this, and that is the state of the law. Now, if you hire a independent group, you don't appoint that group, and that group goes out and works with people in the community, then that's different, and that's how that is done. But if you're doing it, then it's your subcommittee, and it must comply with the open meeting law. And it is absolutely positively clear.
Trustee Nicolette, and then I will likely call for a vote after this.
Thank you, I appreciate that. The last 5 searches, and I've only been part of this current one, or the previous one, but I watched the other ones. I paid great attention to them. And it was a lot of work. It was Hardy-worthy work. And I don't want to make the same mistake that we did the last 5 searches. And I'm not going to say that people made mistakes. It just didn't work. And I have more trust in Washoe County School District employees, HR in this particular case, communications, our executive leadership team, and our board of trustees to make a better decision and more integrity to and fidelity to the work than I do with a national search firm. It's pretty clear to me. Strike 5, actually, to use the baseball term. I would like us to deep dive this a little more to look at a combination. Our HR department and board of trustees can't do this alone. That you're already working real hard. You've got 6,000 employees that you need to take care of on a daily basis. Having said that, I want us to look at an option 3. I do not want to do a national search, and given what the motion is, I will be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Nicolette. All right, coming back to the motion, we have a motion from Clerk Rodriguez, seconded by Vice President Mayberry, to move forward with a national search. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
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 Motion carries 5-2. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. These are really difficult decisions. And personally speaking, I didn't expect to have to be here in this situation again, but I'm grateful for the rigorous dialogue around it and all the different options. Thank you so much. All right, that closes item 2.01 and then now brings us to item 2.02, which is the discussion and possible action to retain the professional services of one or more search firms and/or consultants in support of the superintendent search process, and authorize staff to enter into a contract or contracts not to exceed a total value of $100,000 with one or more of the following proposers: Hazard, Young, Tia and Associates, McPherson and Jacobson, LLC, and Ray and Associates. This is an item for possible action. And to join Ms. Weir and Ms. Shum, we also now welcome Andrea Sullivan, our Director of Procurement and Contracts. And we'll go ahead and before we jump in, I think it would be good to just provide a little bit of background on this process so that everybody's on the same page with that knowledge. And before you do that, I just want to point out that with the amount, it's just meant as a max. So for example, if anybody were to go back to 2019, when this process was done in the process that eventually brought Dr. McNeil as the superintendent, that agenda item was the same, $100,000 was set. So it's not necessarily that we'll spend that, that's just an umbrella limit, so I don't want anyone to be confused. Each of these paths have potential different costs associated to it, including different add-ons, so I just wanted to be really clear with that with the reporting. But thank you so much. If you could give us a brief overview, and then we'll move forward with the presentations.
Yes, good morning. For the record, I'm Andrea Sullivan. I'm the Director of Procurement and Contracts. Due to the short timeline we have to recruit a new superintendent, given that we want this person to start for the new school year, and in anticipation of possible board direction to use an external search firm, purchasing department, in collaboration with these wonderful ladies from the Human Resources Department, drafted and issued an informal request for proposal. These services are exempt from the bidding requirements outlined in NRS 332, so you are not obligated to do any sort of solicitation for this if you chose not to. However, I always, as you know, like to have competition, and we wanted you, the trustees, to have a choice of multiple good qualified firms. So in that spirit, we did decide to issue an informal RFP. Human Resources and Purchasing drafted it. We formed an evaluation committee, and we developed the weights and criteria. And the criteria that we included for the first round, which was the round that we did internally, was experience and track record of the firm. So we want the firm to demonstrate that they have the experience and track record successfully placing superintendents in this type of role. The recruitment strategy and methodology was another one. Obviously, that's a big one. We want to know sort of their methodology for how this process would unfold, what they would do, how, what steps they would take, how they would recruit good candidates to put in front of you. We also looked at the timeline and deliverables. This is a short timeline for a superintendent search. If you recall the last time, I believe we started in October. And so we really kind of started this in the December timeframe. So it is a tight timeline, so we wanted to look at their timeline and how they could meet with our requiremit's to have a superintendent in place for the next school year. And then we wanted to look at the expertise of the team assigned to the project. So it's good to have a firm that has the good experience, but we wanted to make sure the team that they're assigning to this project had the background and expertise to guide you and lead this search in a professional way. We also looked at communication and collaboration. How are they going to communicate and collaborate with you, the trustees, and how are they going to communicate and collaborate with staff and the community at large and the various stakeholder groups. And then finally, we looked at the overall cost and value to the district. We issued that RFP on December 11th, and proposals were due on January 5th. We received 5 proposals, all from full-service firms. So not from firms that did one piece and another firm that did a second piece that we might have to combine together. These were all full-service firms that could lead this search from the beginning to the end. The committee met and we discussed on January 11th, the committee met and discussed all of the proposals that we received, what their strengths and weaknesses were, looking at the strategic plan and what our goals are there to see if we could identify finalists. So through that, we did identify 3 firms as finalists, and those are Hazard, Young, Attia and Associates, McPherson and Jacobson, and Ray and Associates. And those finalists were notified of their status on January 12th, and they've been working hard since then to prepare for their presentations to you today. So that's sort of a little background on the informal request for proposal process that we used, and I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Kate Shum to talk about the interview format.
Good morning. I'm Kate Shum, Interim Director of Employee Services and Talent. Since this is an item where the board could directly choose a vendor and agree to enter into a contract on behalf of WCSD, certain rules apply to item 2.02 that are not typical for WCSD. First, any notes you take for item 2.02 are public records. Since this is part of the RFP process and potential award of a contract, keep any notes that you take from 2.02 separate from private notes you have for other items. Each firm will have no more than 20 to 25 minutes for their presentation. We will be managing the time. President Smith will be managing the time and giving notice as it runs low. There will be about 10 minutes for Q&A from the trustees. Each trustee who chooses to ask a question should be prepared in advance with the question and ask your questions specific to the firm's process. If you don't have a question, that is okay. Just because you ask a question of one vendor doesn't mean you need to ask it for all. It is very likely the vendor submitted materials, narrative from their presentation, or other trustees' questions may provide all the information you need.
And then at the conclusion of these presentations, the trustees are allowed to then deliberate and may make a final selection and direct us to contract with one of these vendors. So that's all we have. We're open to any questions that you might have of us before you begin the presentation and interview process.
Sure, and I see a question with Trustee Church. This is a good time for everyone to turn to a fresh piece of paper in your notepad, just to make sure that your notes are separate. And, excuse me while I clear my throat. As we do proceed, just so that nobody thinks I'm being rude, we do have these timelines, so I will be interrupting to ensure that the presenters know that we're running low on time and that all of our trustees have been previously noticed that we need to be mindful of our own time with questions and that we may not all have questions for every proposer, and that's okay too. Trustee Church.
Thank you. First, I have a really, really dumb question. Is Dr. Mason still with us?
I can't answer the question.
Okay, I just heard.
Yes.
again, I have my hearing aid in, I heard interim something, and I must have missed it. Okay.
Yeah, that's for a bifurcated position within the HR department.
Okay.
Yes.
So you mentioned you did an informal RFP. Can you explain, tell me what that is?
Sure. So a more formal RFP process usually takes a little bit longer. It's more of a 3 or 4 month process, but most importantly, those RFPs are taken in a sealed manner. They bring in a sealed box with their proposals, and we open them publicly. Given the timeline that we had for this, we chose, and because there's no requirement in law to do anything, we chose to do an informal process, so they were able to, and it was over the holidays, so they really only had a week or two to really look at it and respond to it when you look at the holidays and they were able to email those responses to a secure email in the purchasing department, and that's really the biggest difference is that we just didn't follow the sealed bid process, and we condensed the timeline down.
Did we reach out to the Bryan Group?
We didn't specifically reach out to them, but we certainly did everything as far as notifying potential vendors the same way that we do in all solicitations. So the Bryan Group was in no way excluded. We posted on DemandStar, we posted on our solicitations website. If Bryan Group was aware, and it sounds like they were, that we were in this position, they could have submitted a proposal, they could have reached out to me and said anything. I haven't heard anything from them. They did not submit a proposal, but they had every opportunity to do so, as all the other firms did.
Okay. And just at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned that we wanted a short time frame and some other comments. I'm not being rude. I'm really curious. Who's we? I mean, who decided we wanted a short timeline?
Well, I'm basing that on the fact that it's desirable to have a superintendent start for the new school year. And so working back from that.
But again,
did
you have direction? I mean,
I can jump in there. If we potentially choose someone today and we have a meeting on February 2nd, that's when this board would actually choose its own timeline. So we would actually set a timeline in that tentative meeting on February 2nd. So we'll actually decide that. So for now, we're choosing the method through which we'll do the search, but we may work with whoever partner we choose and set our own timeline at that point. So it could be faster, it could be longer, but we would actually define that in the February 2nd meeting.
Well, I'll wrap it up then. I'll just put on the record, I keep hearing the word we, and we want a short timeline, and we want this, and we want that. We ain't me, and I've never been consulted on any of this, so I just want to put on the record that we ain't me.
All right. I think on that note, we're ready for our first proposal.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to.
Okay, well, thank you for having us, first of all. We did bring in our A team for this search, and we're going to introduce ourselves in a second. You have our full bios and resume in our proposal. And I just wanted to say we wanted to be there in person today, but the three of us are in 3 different spots over the country, and we all 3 couldn't make it there in person. So we wanted you to meet the full team. So this is your HYA search team. So I'm Mike Ritchie. I've worked for HYA for the past 6 years. Doing searches all over the U.S. And my background, 39 years in education, 25 as a superintendent, principal before that, and the elementary teacher prior to that. So, and I've got 2 wonderful partners on our Zoom call today.
Go ahead, Connie.
Okay, hello, I'm Connie Collins. Thank you for having us. I was a superintendent for 16 and a half years, in education for over 40 years, and I have been working with HYA since 2017. It's indeed a pleasure. The last district where I was superintendent was a district that was a majority minority school district, and I've worked in districts with other demographics as far as economic just demographics that vary from district to district, and it's been a pleasure. So thank you so much for having us. It's good to be here. Max?
It was great to be here, even virtually. Hi, I'm Max McGee. I'm president of the firm, and I've been everything from a substitute teacher to state superintendent of schools in Illinois. But what I'd like to emphasize is what I hope that I can do for you, and that is to enlist not just the three of us, but our whole team of over 100 consultants to assist in identifying the individuals to slate, one of whom will be the perfect fit for your school district. I've had experience working, serving districts from size of 1,700 to Chicago Public Schools, I think it's 350,000 or something. So really looking forward to working with you, and we can't wait to get started. I do want to add that we have terrible weather here in Chicago, and I have a flight, so I will only be here for the presentation. But Mike and Connie are certainly more than capable of answering any and all questions.
Okay, we'll move on. And why HYA? We feel that there are a number of reasons why HYA should be your firm of choice. We are a national firm, but we have a local contact with whatever school district we're working with. As Max indicated, we've worked with districts all over the country, so we understand the needs within different states, within different districts, depending on what the demographics may be. We also have a strong focus on community engagement. That is something that I am very proud of, that we conduct and meet with community members as well as internal stakeholders, and students are also that we meet with them and hear what they have to say about what the strengths of the district are, what the challenges are, and what are the characteristics that you're looking for in the next superintendent. Student involvement in the search process gives us a lot of information and is something that we take very seriously. So that's what makes HYA special.
Great, thanks, Connie. And here you have a couple of testimonials as well as a long list of some of the larger urban districts that we have served. But every district is unique. And we know with the demographics in your district, the importance of engaging through this whole process with a Spanish-speaking population and other languages as well. And so when we, again, kind of talk about the engagement phase, we have experience, no matter how large the district is getting these communities to participate in the process so that we learn what is unique about your school district, what is unique about the larger community, as well as each community within the district. And so this kind of, again, urban experience in our large network of consultants, our job will be to make your job difficult, and that will be to bring you a slate of candidates, one of whom will be the perfect one for you to choose.
As Max indicated, the three of us have worked with a number of districts in doing superintendent searches. I worked with Fort Worth, Atlanta, Montgomery County, Maryland, and Montgomery County with the online survey as well as with a Zoom. We had over 1,600 community members, parents, et cetera, who participated in a Zoom meeting. That was larger than anything that the district had experienced in getting feedback from the community. So we were very pleased with the involvement and our ability to handle that number of individuals in a meeting like that. Our search is unparalleled. We are inclusive. We're also transparent. So we bring everything to you, all of the applications, as well as we have a portal that you're able to use to really put all of the documents in so that you know and are reminded of what's going on. And we provide regular updates. We also, when the board is interviewing, we provide you with sample questions and scenarios to help you through that process. It's up to you if you want to use them or not, but we give you something to start with to make your job easier. And as Max indicated, we have a national network of over 100 consultants who assist us in this aggressive recruiting. And every applicant for the position is assigned to one of a single point person to stay in touch with them.
Great, Connie, thanks. We did put some statistics up here about the number of searches we conducted, and the reason is because we deliver a high quality service. We work for you and we work with you. It's not the other way around. And so we develop these trusting relationships. So much of our business comes through positive referrals. And so I think this chart speaks for itself over the last 2 years of how the number of searches that we've done. But again, every search is unique, and Mike has put together this team, and we are, personally and professionally invested in making sure your search is successful.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion are very important to HYA, and we work with national organizations as well as local organizations. We ask them for any candidates that they may be aware of, as well as those that we are aware of. We don't just sit and wait for candidates to come to us. We go out and recruit, and we're looking for high quality candidates, but we feel also that diversity, equity, and inclusion are very important. And we find that the communities as well as the boards appreciate it when we're looking at diverse candidates. I'm a member of and did the search for the AASA director, who exists right now and has been in the position for a little over a year. Also, I'm a member of the National Alliance of Black School Educators. And these are all organizations which are sources for recruiting candidates for school districts. I know Mike is also a member of the National Association of School Superintendents, and HYA has done some major work with ALAS in order to move that organization forward. So we believe that every child does have a right to a quality education, and that's what we're about, finding leaders who will move forward in that direction to see that the standards and the quality that you hold near and dear to you are upheld.
So how our search process works, we talked a little bit already about our engage phase, but really we have 3 phases. We have that engage phase, the recruit phase, and then our select phase, and then transition comes in at the very end. But throughout our engage phase, we're going to involve all your stakeholders. We're really going to hit hard on making sure your community understands the needs that you have. And so how we do that, first of all, we're gonna start, we want to make sure all your community voices are heard. And really important to us are the student voices. And so they're going to get a big piece of giving us information. So we'll start with a planning meeting with the board, and that will be then followed by, we'll go through the whole search timeline. We'll make sure everything's in place. This is your search, so you can adjust our timeline however you want. We'll make it work for you. We'll interview all board members individually. We'll start gathering information about those characteristics. We'll schedule numerous focus groups across your community. We will also do community engagement, community halls, town hall meetings. There is a great online survey that we have. We'll take all of this information and we'll put together a district profile leadership report that will become a great roadmap for your new superintendent. And when we look at, how do we conduct our focus groups? What do? We use a combination. So we'll do some in person, we'll do some virtual, we'll do flexible times. We found Sunday night, 7 o'clock is a great time to do a Zoom with parents because they usually are home at that time. We'll go out into the community. We'll seek your stakeholders wherever they might be. And we have these target groups. And so in that planning meeting, we'll come up with what groups we're going to do focus groups with. It's going to be staff, support staff, certified staff, parents, business leaders, city officials, anyone that you want us to do focus groups with, we'll be happy to do those focus. But we do insist we go into the schools and we meet with high school students. And I always like to share something that our high school students said. So these 2 quotes came from high school students. The new superintendent needs to have a good taste in music, so they know they'll make good taste in decisions. The new superintendent needs to continue the legacy of the previous superintendent and be willing to listen to students, gain input from students, and be open-minded to change. And my other favorite one is, again, from high school students, you can hire an old superintendent, but they must be like a fun grandma or grandpa. The new superintendent must have a sense of humor, be engaged, and be present. So the high school students, they must have a say and give us, what they think is important. Then we move on to that recruit phase. We recruit, we're a national firm. We recruit a number of different ways. And so in every focus group, we're going to ask the stakeholders, is there anyone that you know of that we should go after? We'll go after sitting superintendents, non-traditional people. So we ask every group that question. If you haven't checked out our website, I would encourage you to check out our website. It's a great place for national recruiting as well. Our e-newsletter hits 22,000 subscribers per week. We will design marketing tools, flyers, to meet your needs. We'll look at internal candidates. Do you have any internal candidates that might be a good fit for this position? Our dashboard. Currently, we have over 1,000 candidates on our HYA dashboard representing 48 states. So they've done a profile with us. So we can do a query. We can go based off of experience. We can look at large districts. So we can contact those people. We can recruit those people. Max already mentioned, 130 associates that we can network with across the nation. We attend state and national conferences all the time. We recruit at those events. And then we have a local and national advertising package. And then again, those strong partnerships that we have with our business partners. So then we move on to that select phase. You're going to see every single application in the board portal. It's password protected, and I'll explain the portal in a second. We screen and vet every single application. We'll deliver those candidates to you in a tiered slate, with the number one tier being the strongest. We'll also prepare you for the interviews. We'll design the interview questions based off the profile report. We'll coordinate a day in the district for your finalists. It's really important that finalists spend the full day in your district to really get to know your staff, your students, your district. You're going to be able to get feedback from the groups they meet with during that day, parents, staff, students, through our QR code. That feedback will go instantly to the portal, right to the board. We'll do those reference checks. We do blind reference checks. We'll call people they don't list. We'll do the Google searches, and then we got a very robust third-party background check. And so that's kind of how the select phase works, and then our recruitment phase as well. So one of the things you did ask for is, how much time does your staff have to have vested in this search? So we put this slide together and broke it down by the three phases: the engage, the recruit, the select. And it just kind of gives you an idea of what your time commitment is. So we work for you. We're going to do all your work. Yes, you're going to have to be involved throughout the process. That planning meeting takes about an hour and a half. We'll interview each board member. That's going to be another 30 minutes. We'll coordinate that online survey. So we'll need someone, your communications person, that will guide that person how you put the link out for the survey. We'll present the leadership profile report to the full board at a board meeting in open session. We will draft and edit that job posting, but again, we don't post anything until you give your approval on what gets posted. We'll present the slate of candidates to the board. First round interviews are, generally about 6 hours total. The final interviews are looking at about 4 hours. They coordinate that day in the district, and then you also have the final interviews, and then other items as well. So there is a good breakdown of how much time the board would have to commit to this search. And then we talked a lot already about the board portal. This is what separates HYA, I believe, from other firms. We use the board portal where we don't have to give you 1,000 emails or hundreds of emails. We don't like emailing the board. We put everything in the portal. You have 24/7 access to this portal. So you're going to see every single application as they come in. One click, so even if it's 40 pages, it's going to be all in one document. And you can just, one click, you'll be able to scroll down and see all 40 pages that'll be all attached together as one attachment. So you're not going to have 20 or 30 different attachments per person. It's very easy to use. The schedule will go in there. Everything that we do, we're going to put in the portal. And I'm not going to read this to you. You can go and look at what's in that portal. But this becomes your own personal website. You have access to it 24/7, where you're going to be able to really be involved in this search through the use of this board portal. I think the other thing that separates us with other firms too is at the end of the search, our transition phase. So we will do, if the board wishes, we will do an exit interview with the candidate and the board. And this is our transition dashboard. This is actually included in the fee for the first 6 months. So what this does is this becomes a really good measuring tool, benchmark. You can start the evaluation based off what your community has told us. This is going to be a good way for the new superintendent to be able to start being successful in your district by the board setting those expectations, that communication, the benchmarks. This can be open to the public if you choose that, or it can just be, again, a tool for that new superintendent to be able to map out those first 100 days, the first semester, the first year. And with having obtainable goals and benchmarks, it's going to be a way this board can measure the success of that new superintendent. So this is a pretty powerful piece of our transition phase that we do offer. And then also one of the things that you look for was what's the cost? What's the total cost? Make sure we're upfront, we're transparent. So in our proposal, there are no hidden fees. You can see what the cost is, and there are some things you can do to minimize the cost. So if we do some of the focus groups by Zoom, we're not traveling, we can do other things by Zoom. We'll be there in person whenever you would like us to be there in person. And so we're not going to exceed that travel cost. If we exceed the travel cost, that's going to come out of our base fee. It's not going to come, we're not going to charge you more. So what you see is what you get. The advertising package, we sit down at that planning meeting, we're going to walk you through the package, and probably a middle of the park national advertising package is somewhere around $3,500. And so again, this is the maximum that you're going to see throughout the search. So we wanted to show you everything up front and be totally honest with no hidden cost. So that is our proposal, and I believe we are about 17 minutes in, so we met the 20-minute threshold, and we would be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding our search. And at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you did. You did a great job with the timing, so thank you so much for that. All right, so now we're going to bring it to the board for our questions. So just so everyone knows, the public materials, you have a proposal, which we have as supporting materials, and then also the presentation from today that we can draw from. And I will ask my colleagues to ask questions that can be answered directly, and then also for our respondents, our proposal respondents, to also answer those questions expediently so that we can stay within the roughly 10-minute time period that's going to start now. So on that note, I will go ahead and I will start with two quick questions. The first is, much of your proposal does not align to Nevada open meeting law. How will you ensure that you become familiar with the state laws we must follow?
So Max, you want that, or you want me to take it? Yeah, mute Max.
I hear it. Thanks. I'm sorry, because I'm going to have to leave to catch a flight that was previously scheduled. Very quickly, we are used to working in every state. In fact, I'm finishing a search with a complete open meetings, and I think the transparency is really important. And of course, we will work with your general counsel on that, and we understand how every state differs. And I've done searches in Ohio and Tennessee, which are completely open. In fact, the one in Tennessee, every application we get has to be shared with the public. So we are comfortable and skilled at working with the different pieces of requirements of the state statutes.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, I do have to run to a plane.
No, by all means, go to wherever you need to be.
Thank you.
My second question briefly is, how do you ensure you select and deliver candidates our board and our community will ask you for and need? This may include serious consideration of local candidates.
We are definitely, willing, and here again, it's usually up to the board as to how internal candidates are to be handled. And so if the board would like for us to interview all internal candidates who apply, we will do so. In some instances, we have found that there may be people who apply who may not have the qualifications. And by that, I mean, we have had individuals who were custodians or, working in some other capacity that really didn't qualify for the superintendent's seat because they didn't have the credentials. But we will have conversations with those individuals. Anyone who is not interviewed, we will talk to them and let them know and understand why they were not interviewed for the position and what they need to do.
Thank you. I'll seat Trustee Westlake.
Thank you, President Smith. This question is specifically for Dr. Ritchie. In going through your proposal, when I read it, it sounds like you are going to be the lead for your team, the captain of the ship. Am I correct in that, Dr. Ritchie?
We always appoint one person as the lead, but I can assure you that the three of us will work well together, and you won't even know who the lead is. We're a team, and you're going to get all three of us.
Okay.
But yes, technically I would be the lead.
Okay. Well, then you're on the hot seat.
Great.
So I was very impressed, you being a teacher, a coach, a principal, and a superintendent of the year. You've worn a lot of hats. I'm trying to get a feel for what I, in my heart, feel is important for our district and how it aligns with the vendor that we hire. With all those roles, what do you think is the most important characteristic of a superintendent to support hers or his district?
First of all, I think we have to deliver the mission of the district, but it's our job to find that right fit, and that's done by listening to your stakeholders and coming up with that robust report that we go through. And we will tell you point blank, don't hire someone just to hire someone. It has to be the right fit. So, the high integrity, that trust got to be there. But more important, they have to be ready to deliver to those students, because we already said in our presentation, the students deserve the best. And that starts with that leader, to hold people accountable and to really follow the values of your district, the vision of your district, and really make it a point to be that instructional leader and have every student be successful.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Clerk Rodriguez, followed by Vice President Mayberry.
Thank you, Madam President. I do obviously have a couple questions. One statement in your guys' presentation stated that we, the board, would see all applicants. I was here a couple years ago when we brought on our last superintendent, and one of the concerns that was specifically brought up was that maybe some applicants would not want to be made public in the incipient stage or the infancy of this process. So how would you guys recruit or try to advertise out there to bring forward applicants in such an early stage?
No, that's a great question. And so the two questions we get, as soon as this job is posted, here's the two questions we get. When does my name become public? And are there any internal candidates? And then if there are they strong? So back to your question about, first of all, the people who really want this confidential, they will apply at the very last minute of the posting. So that's going to really protect them for the, 3, 4, 5 weeks of that posting. The second thing is, and when we ask the question, can we contact your current employer, okay? And so usually your high quality people are gonna say no, not unless I'm a finalist. And so we really try to protect them. We do our own research on them, our own digging, our vetting. And when they become a finalist, obviously they know we're going to have to make other contacts as well. And so we try to protect them as much as possible. And we also, in a planning meeting, we talk to the board about the importance of confidentiality. One thing that will sabotage a search is if that name is leaked out. The good candidates will drop out if their name is leaked out. And so we talked to the board about confidentiality. And Connie, anything to add to what I said?
And I think you were pretty inclusive. Many times sitting superintendents who are very successful don't want their names out there unless they are being considered as a finalist because they don't want to jeopardize the position that they're in case they don't get the job.
I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to pause the questioning time so that this comment does not detract from future time that we spend answering questions. So in the event that this board chooses a partner today, when we have a tentatively scheduled meeting for February 2nd, this board would decide how we would handle that. Because as going back to my original question, Nevada open meeting law does actually not allow us to get any applications that the public doesn't also receive. So there is no way to guarantee that. So the way that we controlled for that 2 years ago was we went through a stakeholder feedback process, and then the partner we chose did all of the candidate narrowing, which was the process we adopted and that we could also discuss on February 2nd, so that it wasn't until the finalists. So there is trust involved with the chosen partner, that they would move through the process, and then those people would not become public until they were finalists, which also means that that's the very first time that this board sees candidates. And by the way, that's not new. That's how every single school board in all of Nevada does it. So I just wanted to interject because there is not actually a way to give us those applications without them also being available to the public. So just wanted to clarify that for anybody following along into the board. And give me one moment and I will restart the time. But I thought that that would be helpful, particularly in future conversation. And the time is going to start again.
I just want to make one comment on that too, is, and we can set a date when those applications would go into the portal. So if it would be at the very end of the search or if the finalist or however, again, you already said that February 2nd plan meeting is critical. And we do know that we have to be there in person for that. That was very specific in the RFP.
Right. Thank you, Madam President. And I have one last question. I will agree with a comment that Trustee Nicolette did make a while ago. The Bryan Group, there was a lot of community involvement, and this information is 2 years old, which I do believe is still relevant. Would your group use any of that information and feedback? And you know, obviously, I know you guys will do your own community outreach as well, but I do believe a lot of money and a lot of time was spent in the community involvement with the Bryan Group. So would any of that information be used?
Yes, we can use that information. I think we want to be as current as possible. So, but we don't want to just really disregard anything that may give us additional information about, the district or about the characteristics that you desire in a superintendent. Anything else, Mike, regarding that?
No, we'll definitely read through it and utilize it. And it'll be very interesting to compare and contrast the old data with the new data to see if any of those characteristics changed or the challenges changed. So our report, great roadmap for the superintendent. And the other thing is too, a lot of the people that apply, they know HYA, they've worked with us before. They know this report is coming out. Some of these people will not hit submit on their application until they get a chance to read through that report. Especially the people that are slated will definitely want that report.
Very good. All right, I see two lights on. I'd like to get to both of them, so I'm going to continue on with Vice President Mayberry, followed by Trustee Church.
Thank you, Madam President. Are we doing okay on time? I have two questions. I can limit it to one.
We are doing good on time, but we will need to get to them expediently. So for our proposers, let's make sure that we try to answer as directly as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you for being with us this morning. Here at the Washoe County School Board, we use a balanced governance model. Are you familiar with that? And can you provide assurance that you will communicate that governance model to prospective applicants?
So that's I live in Wisconsin. That's also very common in Wisconsin. So yes, we'll be happy to get that message out to anyone that applies. And again, I talked about what they ask for. Another question they ask us is, well, what's the board like? And then that would be a good time for us to tell them your philosophy and how you operate and function as a board. The other thing they're going to do, they're going to research your district. They're going to go back and watch your board meetings. So they're gonna know you inside out as well.
Thank you. A second question, how far back and how deep do you go for background checks and screening of potential candidates? And how do you identify conflicts of interest with prospective candidates?
The initial checks that we do, at least as far as ourselves, looking at the past history of candidates, is not as deep as that which would be done on the finalists, because we look at and encourage the board to hire a third party company that we work with, a couple of third party companies that really do social media checks as well as background check, driving, any issues with driving or anything else. So therefore it is more complete on the finalists than it is on all of the candidates who apply initially.
And that is laid out in our proposal as to what that covers. It's very, very extensive. It even talks about their financials, their mortgage, their credit card history, if they're deficient in anything. It verifies their college credits, the universities, their degrees. But in that proposal, everything is spelled out what that background check does cover. It's very, very comprehensive.
All right, Trustee Church, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Very, very quickly, if I see right, your salary is that you get 20% of the base salary of the first year for the superintendent. How do you define that? Is that pay and benefits? Would that be a year-end bonus? Or would that just be the base salary?
That would be the base salary, but then it also says not to exceed. So if the 20% exceeds that set, I believe it was 68.5, our fee would be 68.5. It would not be higher than that. So 20% or not to exceed, and that is the base salary, correct?
Yeah. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, so we're probably going to be at that 68 range. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and this presentation. Thank you for sharing this information with us.
Been a pleasure talking to you and wish you nothing but the best.
Yes,
Happy to work with
definitely.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we will be moving on. Just to also signal to the community, what we'll do is we're going to get through the next two presentations and then we'll take a brief break and then come back and begin again with public comment. Okay? All right. And now we have our next group. Are you introducing them or do you want me to introduce them? No? Okay. All right. So for this group, do we have who is presenting for us? Kate and Katie Louise for the McPherson and Jacobson team.
Good morning,
Yes,
Madam President. We have presenting for us on McPherson and Jacobson, Dr. Walt Cooper, Dr. Michelle Hamilton, Dr. Steve Joel, and Mr. Ben Johnson.
Welcome.
Thank you.
McPherson. All right,
Steve,
welcome.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Madam Chair. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I said welcome, and I'll go ahead and start the time once you get started.
Okay. Steve, would you like to start? You're on mute.
Apologize. Yes, we're excited to be here. My name is Steve Joel. I've been with McPherson and Jacobson for probably 25 years. I've been the consultant that has been involved in all of our urban searches, and including Clark County several years ago. I was privileged to do that, lead that search. I'm a 37-year veteran of the superintendency. My last 12 have been in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm very, very familiar with the urban landscape, as is our consultant team. I'm going to have both Walt and Michelle quickly introduce themselves. I'm going to give you an overview, and then we'll move into our presentation. But we want to leave the lion's share of time for your questions. So, Walt.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Walt Cooper. I'm coming to you from Colorado Springs. I, too, am a 32-year retired educator. The last 16 of which I served as superintendent here in Colorado Springs. And I've been with McPherson Jacobson now for several years, going on four search years, and have recently just concluded the search for Albuquerque Public Schools in our urban setting, along with a number of other searches both in Colorado and in surrounding states. So I will be doing the vast majority of the presentation once we get started with that. So I'll refrain from further comments at this point and ask Dr. Hamilton to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hamilton. I am a retired area superintendent, been in education for over 33 years. I currently work for the Georgia Department of Education and reside in the Atlanta metro area. And I too have been on and conducted searches in urban school districts such as Sarasota, Alexandria City, and Virginia. And just looking forward to the opportunity to possibly assist you guys with your search.
Okay, very good. Thank you, team. Well, this is our team. Mr. Johnson was unable to attend today, but he'll also be part of our team. And if we need to add additional consultants, we will. So what I'd like to start with is simply by saying this. No surprise to you, there's been quite a bit of turnover in the superintendent seat in Washoe. And we aim to put a stop to that. Our model is a 5-phase model. Dr. Cooper will spend more time with it, but we really are the search firm that has a significant longevity record. And we do that because we work so hard on the front end with the board and with staff, with community, and with candidates to not only find the right match, but to also support them in their work, which is our phase 5, which is the 5th phase that has us working with you and the new superintendent on first-year performance objectives. We like to...
Mr. Joel, I'm so sorry to interrupt, and I have stopped your time. I want to make sure that the community and the board are following along in your PowerPoint because it's not up here. I believe we're on slide 7 of 9, the services included in this proposed contract where it says phase 5. I just want to make sure that we're following along your presentation along with your narrative.
And what I would say is we haven't started the PowerPoint yet.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
I'm talking about the differentiation between us and other firms. Full transparency, we work very closely with the board and the community and the staff at all times. We have a successful track record in the urban searches. We're very connected to the urban setting, and we know a lot of the superintendents. So our goal really, as Dr. Cooper will share our proposal, our goal is to make sure that your next superintendent is there for a while, because we all know that the average tenure of an urban superintendent is about 3.2 years. That's not enough to move the needle for your students. So our goal is always, when we're working in the urban searches, any search for that matter, is to find superintendents and boards that are willing to commit for the long term, because that's when you see the results for your children, and that's what helps your community become proud of the work that you're doing. So, Dr. Cooper.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here momentarily. Will give me 1 second, please. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes, thank you.
Was it working as it should? Okay, thank you very much. So again, we're McPherson Jacobson. Just a couple of things about our firm. We've been around since 1991. So we have a lot of longevity. We're not going anywhere. And also this really does point, I think, to the fact that our protocols and our strategies, our tools have been refined over time, have withstood the test of time, and sustainability is evidenced by that. We have a national network of over 135 consultants in about 30 states. I'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about why that is specifically important to the work that we undertake. And our approach is that we use a combination of national recruiters and also regional consultants to support searches. And as we talk just a minute about the remainder of our team, I'll touch on that again. The highlights of what we think sets McPherson Jacobson apart is the flexibility and customization of our search protocols and tools. As I said, we've been doing this for a long time, over 30 years. And so there are a lot of things in many searches, almost every search, regardless of if it's urban, suburban, rural, large, small, that are very similar. But regardless of district, there are no two searches that are identical, and they shouldn't be. And so we're willing to engage early with you, work with you to best meet your needs. This is in terms of stakeholder engagement. It's in terms of interview process. Everything we do, we're very nimble and willing to customize that to best meet the needs in Washoe County. We pride ourselves on extensive and authentic engagement of stakeholders. And the two terms there, extensive and authentic, are really important because you can do a lot of community engagement. We can hold a lot of stakeholder meetings. We have a very, very robust online survey with K-12 Insight as the engine behind that survey. We have many tools to engage stakeholders, but if we don't utilize that, if it's not authentic and we don't bring that to you in a very usable format and timely format, then it really works against you in terms of your the perception of your community, and it works against you in the success of the search. So not only do we want to make sure we are very comprehensive in that engagement with stakeholders, whether that be staff, community, businesses, whoever you identify, we want to make sure that we use that in an authentic manner. And then in a minute, I'll give you a couple of data points. As Dr. Joel said, one of the things that we really believe sets us apart is our longstanding track record of placements. And that's a track record that's verified by external data, not anything that is simply germane to us. So here is the search team. 3 of the 4 of us are on the screen with you. Mr. Johnson is from Riverside, California. He couldn't be with us today, but he will join our team as well. You saw earlier that I indicated we use a combination of national recruiters and regional consultants. I don't mean necessarily regional consultants to the actual search, but we really try to blanket the country with our team. Dr. Joel, in addition to being a search consultant, is also one of our national recruiters. And then we really do leverage that network of consultants that we have across the country as we go through this. So you may get asked, and you may be asking yourselves, right? Or you may get asked by constituents, why engage a search firm? And I applaud you for going down this road. But really, there are 4 critical things that any reputable search firm, reliable search consultant can help you with. And I know you're speaking with a number of those reliable firms today. But the first is the process and making sure it's transparent, very structured, and works to limit bias as best we can. In a very, very public-facing role like the superintendent, it's really important that all of these things are in place. You have really talented folks, I'm sure, in human resources or human capital that on a daily basis collect applications, review resumes, vet references, all of that kind of stuff. But in a critical hire like this for the trustees, and as public-facing as this will be, a really structured and transparent process is critical, both to protect you and the candidate from undue criticism through the process that tends to derail some processes if you're not careful. When we engage with stakeholders, we're independent, right? We have no skin in the game. Many times when we step into in-person stakeholder meetings, stakeholders will tell us things or give us feedback that they would not ordinarily say publicly or openly with folks that are too close to the work in the room. We can help you behind the scenes and with all of the logistics around what compensation looks like across the country, what contract terms are looking like, what is, what are moving expenses looking like? What are candidates expecting in that regard? Those types of things. But the most important is the recruiting and vetting of candidates and the objective screening and reference and background checks. This is where we really leverage our network of consultants across the country. It comes as no surprise to anyone. Candidates are not going to include letters of recommendation or list as references folks who aren't going to give them a wonderful report of their candidacy. And so we go very, very deep beyond just the references that are provided. We utilize folks across the country that are in our network. We know many of the candidates that are in this arena. If we don't know those candidates, there's a really good bet that we know someone who knows someone who knows someone through our network. And that's really where we find out the best information about folks' competencies or where they may be exposed in the search process. So why specifically McPherson-Jacobson? Well, first of all, we've conducted over 1,000 superintendent searches across 45 states. That's not really a remarkable data point, I will tell you. Most of the firms you probably will talk to today have very similar numbers, and that's because the best firms get the majority of the work. We've been around a long time. We're not the only firm with longevity, but those that have been around a long time and do quality work get the vast majority of searches in the country, and so those numbers are very, very similar. We truly stand on the strength of our references from previous searches, and that's really where we get most of our work. I could sit here in front of 100 slides and talk for hours and tell you all the great things that we could do, and you would have no idea what is fact or fiction. So we really encourage you to reach out and check the references that are included in the proposal. As I said, we really pride ourselves on being flexible. If we're fortunate enough to support the trustees in this work, this search will not look exactly like any other search we've done, nor any search that we do in the future, because we will customize that. As I said, we have that vast network of consultants across the states that help with vetting, recruiting, and identifying candidates. And because of that, most of our searches across the country include at least 50% of out-of-state applicants. And I don't put that point on here to indicate that an out-of-state applicant is necessarily the best choice. But it just is really to emphasize the fact that we have a wide network and we blanket the country both in terms of our ability to recruit, our ability to reach applicants, and our ability to vet applicants. One of the questions was asked, what would we require of district staff members? I didn't include the board in thinking about this. I thought this was probably specific about staff members, but we can talk about the board's time if you would like that. But I have another slide here in just a second that I'll talk a little bit about what we would require. And then here's the data point that we think really sets us apart. And this is external data. It's not from us, but over 70% of the candidates that we have helped placed over the last 5 years, actually it's close to 80% now, remain in the position after 5 years. And you can see the 2 bullet points there that move that data point to 10 years and 15 years. Dr. Joel referenced the tenure of urban superintendents. That's no surprise to you as well, I'm sure. Also, we are not naive enough to think that there's not some measure of good luck that goes into these data points. There certainly is. But beyond just luck, as Dr. Joel said, we really believe that one of the reasons we're so successful in our folks sustaining these roles is because of the work we do up front. It's not just about identifying a skill set. There are a lot of people across the country that have the skill set to serve as an urban superintendent. The number of superintendents, of candidates that can do that in very specific places dwindles very quickly. And so it really is a matter of us doing the work with you and your community to understand what the best fit is, finding the skill set, and then putting those two together. That's really what leads to this long tenure. And then we do provide a guarantee following phase 5 of our search protocol. I'll explain what phase 5 is in a moment. But if through all of our phases, if for some reason in the first 2 years things don't work out, if the trustees would like us to, we will redo the search for no additional fee. So 2 specific questions you asked. What do we require of staff? I won't read all the way through each of these bullet points, but largely it is the clerical support on the back end that would happen inside of the district where we really don't have access. So we'll need help early on identifying points of contact, distribution lists, those kinds of things. Whatever presence you have on the district's website, obviously we don't have backdoor access to in real time update there, so we would have some assistance there. And then we would need assistance in obviously coordinating, posting, setting agendas, minutes, those types of things for any meetings that involve the trustees. Number 7 there is optional. If the board of trustees would choose for us to do a graphic brochure announcing the vacancy, that's pretty time intensive on district staff because there is a lot of compilation of information and media. We would do the graphic design, we do the distribution. We say that's optional, and our recommendation really is we don't do this. What we found over the years, this used to be a really critical part of searches. Most recently, given robust websites, the digital media, this really, we think, is a significant waste of resources, time, and energy. However, if the trustees would like us to do this, we can certainly accommodate that. Lastly, you asked about what services are included in our fee and our proposal. So we break our services down, or our search, into 5 phases. And as you can see here, phase 1 through 4, those phases happen before you select your candidate. Phase 1 and phase 4 are interfacing with with your team, your search team, and the board. Phase 1, we'd come out, you could see those bullets there, the steps that we would go through, but that's building the blueprint for the search. We identify the criteria, that helps us then subsequently build rubrics for evaluation, that helps us build our screening criteria. All of that information happens in phase 1. Then we go to work in phase 2 and phase 3. That's when we meet with stakeholder groups and distribute the online surveys. We are evaluating all of the applications. We're inviting selected candidates to produce video interviews, responses to video responses to interview questions for further screening. All of that happens before we come back in about 8 weeks or so and engage with the board again around phase 4, which is when we present candidates to you. And with the goal of you selecting which finalists you want to move forward and meet with in person for interviews leading up to the candidate selection. What I will tell you is, given the transparency and open records requirements in the state of Nevada, we would want to talk in phase 1 extensively about how we want to handle the transfer of information, because confidentiality for candidates, especially the best candidates in the pool, is going to be a big deal. And so the transfer of information from your search team to individual board members needs to be handled very carefully and timed very strategically, because as I'm sure you know, as soon as information becomes shared with the board, it becomes shared publicly, and we have to really pay attention to that. And finally, phase 5, that's our transition phase. It's not an add-on. It sits over here to the right, but only because that's after candidate selection. It's included in our fee. It's something we are really, really good at. Dr. Joel is better than any of us at this in terms of working with the board and your new candidate in terms of making sure that everybody is on the same page in terms of expectations and metrics for evaluation, because we want this thing to work. We want, and it's not going to work in a vacuum, and it's not going to work without real intentionality in terms of transition. And so finally, here is our fee from the proposal. And I just want to highlight the fact that what oftentimes with some of our competitors, our add-ons are included in our not to exceed fee. Our online survey is not an additional fee. The K-12 Insight, use of K-12 Insight and that data analysis, high-level analytics is included. Consultant travel and expenses are included for 4 days of us in-person meetings. Those kinds of things, you can see that in the proposal itself. I believe that's page 33 or 34 in the proposal. And we base it on 2 numbers. Our fee, which you see is $42,500. You know you're going to pay that. And then estimated expenses of $17,000. that would go or either pass through to entities like advertising agencies, or their reimbursements for expenses. So that number will fluctuate, but it will not exceed $59,500, which is the not to exceed number at the bottom. So with that, I can always speak very, very quickly, but I can also speak for a long time. I'm going to stop, and we're going to open it up for any questions that you might have. And I think I'll stop sharing my screen now, if that's okay, unless there are, I'll reshare if any trustee wants to see another slide, but I would rather have the video here. So
Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper.
Madam Chair,
appreciate
we'll take any
that.
questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper. An excellent job on the timing. So spot on with that. In case my colleagues are wondering, so there's the presentations from today, and then there's also PDFs of supporting materials, and that's where you can find that schedule of costs in that other PDF. So I'll go ahead and I'll start us off. And again, same rules apply, with everybody trying to be brief so we can get to as many as possible. And with that, I'll start. Some of your proposal does not align to Nevada open meeting law. How will you ensure you become familiar with the state laws we must follow?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. And we're aware of that. What I will tell you is we've worked in states anywhere from, so I'm currently leading the search for Albuquerque Public Schools. We'll wrap that up next week. Albuquerque Public Schools has absolutely the most stringent disclosure requirements we've seen across the country. Immediately upon closing, all applicants are disclosed. So we had to navigate that. We've also worked in states where Maryland, for example, where it is a very closed, very confidential process from start to finish. So we would say two things to that. Number one, we are aware of the requirements in Nevada. We also are very quick to engage with local counsel if we have any questions around that. But as I said during the proposal, when we step into phase one, if we're selected and we build the blueprint for the search, we will want to talk very, very carefully, or not carefully, but extensively about how we and when we share candidate information with the board, because quite frankly, in states that have really, really stringent disclosure requirements, it makes navigating pools with high quality candidates very difficult. As you might imagine, folks don't want to be out there publicly, especially sitting high performing superintendents don't want to be out there publicly just on the chance that they might be considered on down the line as a finalist in the search. So that is not something that we are not used to navigating.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I will start with Vice President Mayberry and follow with Trustee Westlake.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a thank you for being with us. I just have a few questions for you. I want to make sure I save time for everybody else, so just tight, succinct answer would be appreciated. So first question, I was intrigued by sort of your vetting of the candidates, the background checks, your comprehensive vetting and that. Can you go give us a little deeper dive on what that looks like for the final candidates?
Yeah, I'll handle that one, Walt. So, we begin the application process with a informal interview of each of the viable candidates. We want to make sure that they are who they present themselves as. And then we go as deep as we need to go to learn as much as we can about the candidates' work, their personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses, and any issues that they might have. We always ask the candidate, and we ask their references, are there any skeletons in the closet? When we bring you the short list of candidates, when you make the decision of whom you would like to bring forward, we then conduct a comprehensive background check. It's criminal, financial, it's academic, and just like every other firm, it's very extensive, and we present all of that information to you and or your staff. So we won't let you enter into contract negotiations until everything that we've discovered we can explain fully to you.
Does that background include something like a reputational background check?
Yes, and again, a lot of that is going to come from the contacts that we've been able to generate on the search. But if there's anything in there with regard to social media, that that's also included as well too. And so our goal is to, when we bring you the finalists, we'll bring you a video of those that we suggest are closely in line with what and whom you're looking for. And then we'll also share extensively anything that has been discovered via social media so that there aren't any secrets. You know everything that's out there. And of course, sitting superintendents are going to have things in their background and on social media that we just have to be able to explain to you.
Yeah, and also changing topics for a minute, certainly there's a desire to cast a fairly wide net, but certainly there's also a desire to look at potential internal and candidates in our region and our state. I noticed some of your material, you have a list that you pull from. Can you give us some assurance that you'll cast that wide list and that we'll have a diverse group of folks represented across the nation, including here at home, to the extent that you can?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me just tell you that we treat internal candidates exactly as we treat external candidates. They have to meet the criteria. They're going to go through the same process that we put everybody else through. And we're the ones that are very, very honest with them in terms of where they stand, whether or not they're going to advance. We will cast a wide net, but I will tell you, every search firm has a database. We've got about 2,500 individuals that are registered with us. We'll send a blurb out to them. But if you look at the advertising portion of our proposal, we're going to not only put it on our website, which gets about 100,000 hits a month, but we're going to advertise this position very aggressively in the national publications too. So the other advantage you get with me, for example, is I'm very involved with ASSA Urban Academies, and as well as some of the other groups like Council of Great City Schools and things of that sort. So there are conferences coming up and an opportunity to really begin to get the word out very aggressively that this is an opportunity that quality people should be looking at.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, President Smith. I just have a brief comment and then a couple of questions. I suppose we do look very urban on paper, but we really kind of have the heart of a rural community. We have some very strong rural areas. Reno is the biggest little city, so I just wanted to make sure that that was stated. My question is really for any of you here today, and thank you for being here. The record of sustainability and leadership is very impressive. That's 70 now. You're saying it's 80%, 50%, and 40% for retention. What do you think is the most important character value in a superintendent that contributes to sustainability and retention?
I'll take a swing at that. I believe it's integrity. I believe it's transparency. I believe it's competency. But above all, this individual has in his or her heart children as first and foremost priority. And then it really is about being able to work with individual trustees and trustees collectively as a board. It's really pretty simple in educational leadership circles. You have to be able to do two things very well, and you have to have a track record for it if they're going to be eligible for a position like this. You have to know how to lead change productively, and you have to know how to solve problems. And so much of that is centered on relationships. So we're really big. I'm really big. I know my team is really big on. We want to work with people that have a proven track record of establishing high quality relationships, where they treat everybody as if they're the most important person in a district or a community, and then has the ability to work through the challenges and the opportunities. But at the end of the day, if we also would say that our longevity is associated with the fact that we'll come back and work with the trustees and the superintendent to at least create that first foundation of what it's going to take to successfully work together. And, I totally appreciate and understand that, you are in a lot of ways, you have more rural than you do urban. But I will also tell you that the next superintendent has to be able to navigate all of that, but also do it within the reins of a very complex, highly complex organization, which is what Washoe is.
Okay. And lastly, sorry.
Let me add a comment, a follow-up comment on that. So number one, living in Colorado Springs, I fully understand the interface of rural and urban. So thank you for that comment. But I would add one more facet to what Dr. Joel said relative to those criteria. And that is when we get to the point of you interviewing your final candidates or even selecting the finalists, but certainly interviewing the finalists, everything that Dr. Joel indicated about what is the most important criteria can be demonstrated. And we want to make sure that we deeply engage candidates in conversations that will have interview conversations, questions and responses that will evidence their demonstration of those, not what they think is best or what they will do, but really what they have proven in terms of their track record that would think that they could both scale it and replicate it in your school districts.
Perfect, thank you. And lastly, I like the idea of spouses or significant others attending interviews day. Do most districts you've worked with want to meet with partners of applicants?
I will tell you that probably 10 years ago, that was an absolute given. Today, and not so much. I mean, what we see, if I understand your question correctly, what we see right now is superintendent candidates coming in for interviews that have spouses or significant others that are engaged in employment as well. But we certainly always put that out as an option. And, it will come down to a superintendent that's coming in from the outside will need to have the support of their family to take on a challenge such as this one.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you guys for being here today. I have two, maybe three questions. One, I have to agree with Trustee Westlake. The retention is pretty impressive. However, my wife, like she says, I kind of read into things sometimes. So this is the same position after 5 years. Is that the same position with the same district?
It is.
Okay, very impressive. And with that, can you kind of just elaborate a little bit more with how you do it? How do you guys manage to get these superintendents to find these candidates that have such impressive longevity?
Well, we can recruit them because we have the contacts all over the country through many organizations, right? So we're well connected. And when we profile this position, we'll start working with you, and then of course we'll gather stakeholder feedback. We'll be able to then share with candidates, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and how does that match up with their skills? So that's the first part. The second part really is working with you to make sure, we want to make sure that, your heart's in the right place, that you are willing to make this commitment, that you want to stem the tide of the turnover, and we'll be willing to work in that regard with your next superintendent. So, that to me is the difference maker for our company and in the searches that I've done, and I've done many searches, is you have to come to the table with a willingness to really work hard with your next superintendent. And that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be disagreement. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be challenges that are going to hit you to the core. But at the end of the day, how do you solve problems and how do you lead change to get the kind of results that you want? And we find many districts, probably 8 or 9 districts that I've done searches for, I continue to do that team building, mutual annual performance expectations with, because boards have made that commitment to that, right? And they've also made the commitment to some form of policy governance, which basically defines roles and responsibilities. And when those kinds of things, and we'll talk with you more about that, when those kinds of things are put on the table, superintendents will be successful unless there's something extraneous to the individual that, you know, nobody saw coming. And that could be like a medical issue or a family issue or something like that. So no, we take great pride in the fact that we work really hard on the front end, but we really work hard with you too. And so, you know, again, not to belabor the point, it's a hard environment, and we don't want to promise you that we're going to bring you 3 world-class, talented people that are all going to be knocking on the door. What we're going to do is we're going to bring you the best that's out there. We're going to recruit hard, and we want to be able to say to them, this board is committed to working with you in the short term and the long term, because there's plenty of work to do. You know, I've read your articles about your academics and, you know, some of the planning that you're doing around that. Those are great opportunities, but it takes everybody working together.
If I might add just one follow-on comment that to put a very pragmatic twist on that. For example, your commitment to balanced governance, for example, is a perfect example of when we do our work in talking with candidates. We may have a very, very talented, high-performing, very successful candidate that's worked in a traditional coherence governance model or a traditional policy governance model, right? So that may not be the best fit for you, given your commitment to balanced government. Doesn't mean that one is better than the other, one is bad or one is good. But it's those types of nuances that we have to consider if we really want to bring to the table candidates that have the potential to serve in that role for 5 years or 10 years or longer.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Cooper, or is that Dr. Cooper? Sorry, Dr.
Walt,
Cooper.
please. I prefer Walt.
Okay, we'll do that. Well, thank you so much. We're just about at time, but wanted to say thank you so much for your presentation and for answering our questions. Thank you.
We wish you the very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamilton, and Dr. Joel as well.
Thank you.
All right, and then that brings us to our third group. And just as a reminder to everyone, we will take a 10-minute break after this last presentation, and then when we restart, we will go directly into public comment.
Our third and final presentation is Ray and Associates. Presenting to us today will be Dr. Chestnut, Dr. Fulties, Mr. Martinez, and Ms. Forday.
Hello and welcome.
Good afternoon. How's everyone?
We're doing well, thank you.
Awesome. Are you ready for us to get started?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever you get started, I'll start time. I know that you're already familiar with the process, and so far everyone's been doing a good job with that, so I haven't had to bust in too much. But the floor is yours, sir.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'll ask Steve, are you able to share your screen so we can see the presentation? Thank you. I'm not hearing you.
We are also not hearing anyone else. We hear you,
Okay.
Dr. Faltis, but not anyone else.
Okay. I see that Libra's mic is muted. Steve's appears to be unmuted, so I'm not sure why we're not hearing him yet. We'll get up to speed here in a second.
No worries.
Thank you.
Technology is fun.
Well, we're all in a new age, aren't we?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Good.
Awesome. All right, so we can go ahead and get started. The first couple pages are introductions, and so just to expedite things, we can go ahead. First of all, thank you for having us be a part of your presentations today and be with you today. Thank you for your commitment and volunteering your time and energy to serve not only your community, but most important, the children of your school district. So I appreciate that. The slides will pop up in a minute, hopefully, but my name is Dr. David Faltis, and I have been was a superintendent for 18 years, retired about 3 years ago, right as we got, at least in Texas anyway, right as we got kind of everybody back in school from COVID. And I was actually planning to retire spring break of 20, and we never came back from spring break. So you remember those fun times. So I've been with Ray and Associates a little over 3 years. I've conducted searches not only in Texas, but in Michigan, Arkansas, Kansas, currently doing one in Arizona, and hopefully one in Washington that we'll help out with. And then one of my excitements about this particular position is if you Google Dr. David Faltis, you will also see a Dr. David Faltis in Reno, who is a pediatric dentist for My Kids Smiles, and his partner serve children of your district. And so if there's the opportunity for us to work together, I'd be really excited for the chance to get out there and see him a little more often. So we were out there in the last, I don't know, 6 weeks or so, and got to look around your community and really enjoyed being out there. And of course, he's been there 3 years and just absolutely loves it. And so with that, I'll hand it over to, I'm not sure who's next on our slide yet. I think it's.
Oh. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
That's not good. Let me try again.
Let me try from my end and see.
There we go.
Are you able to see that?
And no worries, I stopped the time just so everyone knows we're not punitive. If we have some tech issues, we'll pause the time. Don't worry. Here to be fair and to give you that opportunity, so no worries.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So Steve, I'll run it from here if that works.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Pleasure to be with you. My name is Steve Chestnut, and I'm very proud to be serving with Ray and Associates. We get very excited about the possibility of working with school boards to help you find your next superintendent. It's a passion we have and a way we give back to the profession. I was superintendent for 21 years in the state of Washington, and then came down to Arizona about 12 years ago. I was superintendent for 6 years down here and spent my last 2 years of full-time work as an executive director in the Scottsdale Unified School District, and we continue to live here. Greatly enjoy my new part-time work with Ray and Associates, and as I said, assisting school districts, and looking forward to our discussion with you today, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Just like has been said, thank you. I'm Libra Ford. I'm excited to be here with you. My education advocacy background is a little bit different, but I think very appropriate for what you guys are looking for. I recently just turned off of a school board here in Oregon, and now I sit on the state education board. My background in education began in Hawaii, where I'm the founder of the first hybrid school in Hawaii. And that was early 1990s, so that was before the pandemic, and now it's the largest charter school there. So I've been advocating for military children and children for many years, and I've sat in that seat that you're in, so I'm super excited to be here with you and assist you from a different lens.
And then we have Mr. Jose Martinez. I think he's still trying to log on, so he will join us soon as one of our regional search associates. And you can see from his bio there on the screen that he's been a teacher, director of magnet programs, principal, president, CEO of various companies. And then we also have Mr. Jeffrey Pelzel, who will be on our team as one of our search associates. Jeffrey couldn't be with us today, but as you can see, he has served as superintendent in the Newhall County School District in California, kind of across the lake from you guys, I think. And so that will comprise our team. I failed to mention that I am, I guess, on the leadership team, if you will, as the managing director. And so I will, Steve will probably be your main point of contact, but I will also be in there. And again, having family in town, I hope to be able to come visit you guys as much as possible. With that, we'll let Libra take the next couple of slides.
Excellent. So much, David. I think that it's brilliant that the first statement that you guys said in the middle of our presentation is that we're not punitive. And that resonates with me, because in doing the work that we've done in researching your district, it is focused and strength-based on student-centered work. in working with the partnership of families and community. And so I think that we experienced that today and just how you brought us in here. And we absolutely want to elevate that existence in who you are. Next slide. So I think that just in a quick synopsis of who Ray and Associates is, I want to first say that, like I said earlier, I sat in your seat, and in my school district during the pandemic, we lost a superintendent, and we worked with Ray and Associates, and I was so impressed with who we are that now I am part of that we. So who we are is an experienced and diverse group of individuals. From our ownership to the associates, we have over 40% of our existence being of the people of color or women identifying individuals. Our process keeps you informed in the now. A lot of the work that you're doing is from a volunteer seat, and so we want to make sure that you're up to date on information and making informed decisions, and we will help you do that, guide you through that. Our partnerships obviously are nationwide, with our associates representing many different areas across the country, which gives us all types of information and all types of access that'll be important for you to make a good decision. And of course, we have the largest candidate pool, which will give you an opportunity to not only make an informed decision, but from a pool of candidates that will be qualified and exemplary as you review them. Ray and Associates is also, of course, inclusive in the process. So we want to make sure that you know that just in my existence here, but also just like I said earlier, our 40% of our associates and our ownerships being women, that is very important to us. And we want to make sure that you know we stand on that.
Jose, you're muted, Jose. You're muted.
Thank you. Technology is a challenge. I'm Jose Martinez, and I also am a practitioner from teacher to superintendent. I'm working now with Ray and Associates. I would like to let you know what is it that we will do for you. At the beginning, we talk to you and create a timeline that meets your needs. What is it that you want by when? We also very hard, and I will tell you different steps we take in creating a profile of the ideal candidate. We, for example, interview board members one by one, separately. We do that because sometimes there's a little bit of a difference between what one wants and the other, and we help make you understand what those are, and you make a decision. We also do a whole lot of interviews and focus groups, depending on the groups that you want to hear from. Some districts want to hear all the way to the Chamber of Commerce and know what type of candidate they want, and some want it to be teachers and a few other groups. And that is what you decide, because this is your search, not ours, it's yours. Then what we do is prepare focus groups, meetings, Zoom, in person, that depends on you, and distribute a research-based and call the 31 characteristics or quality of a good superintendent. Everybody is asked to feel which one are the 10 that they like the best. And what happens there is that you will see that we come up with a list that you will vet that says, this is how the superintendent looks like, feels like, talks like, this is what you are looking for. And once you confirm that, we are able to start the process of finding your candidates. And that process also is very research-based. We do have a great deal of candidates that have been with us in the past. We have more than 2,000 addresses in emails. Everything goes out. We do advertise, of course, the way that most districts do advertise. And also we have a very large group of associates that learn about the position and start reaching out personally, one by one, all kinds of people that we believe fit the profile that we have helped you develop.
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Thank you, Jose. Jose just did a great job of describing stages 1 and 2 of our process. And I think a really easy way to picture our process, if you look in your proposal from us on page 30 and 31, there's two different timelines, suggested timelines for you to consider. And it shows pretty clearly these 5 stages that we go through. Jose mentioned the first 2. The third stage is recruitment. And we work very hard to aggressively recruit top candidates, as Jose mentioned. We advertise on many fronts, as he mentioned, including social media. Our nationwide network of associates is helpful, and I know that in most searches, I reach out to a couple people personally who I know may not be thinking of a job if I think it's a good match for them. Last couple of years, one of my part-time jobs has been to work with superintendents in the 7 western states for a company called Learn Platform, educational technology company, and that was my job, was to reach out to superintendents. So I have a network out there that I try to keep current and up to date on openings that might be of interest to them. Next slide shows stage 4, which is the candidate pool. So we go to all that work of advertising, collecting applications, and we will end up with a candidate pool. And it's always exciting to see those applications come in. We screen those candidates according to the board-developed profile that Jose described. That profile is so important. It tells candidates if this job is a good fit for them. It ends up being a good description of what the board is looking for in the new superintendent. And then we use that at every step of the way in screening those applications as they come in, in presenting them to you. And we hope that you will use that profile as you make your final decisions on who you want to interview. That candidate pool, when we go through that candidate pool, we are looking to narrow it down to the top 10 or 12 candidates that we want to bring to you for consideration for that first round of interviews. And of course, we do extensive internet checks on them, including their social media, to make sure that there's nothing online that is a surprise. And most practicing superintendents have some controversies they've been involved with. That's to be expected, but we want to make sure there's no problems that we need to be aware of and make you aware of. As I said, after that process, then we bring you the top 10 or 12 candidates a couple months into this process, and then you get to decide who we're going to interview in that first round. But you will also have access to all of the applications, including the ones that we are not bringing in the top 10 or 12. And it is your search. If you decide that you want to move forward one of those candidates, that is certainly up to you. But mainly, we want no surprises for the board at any step of the process. So that communication is so important that we have on a weekly basis, ideally with the board president or a board representative with district staff, to just make sure the process moves along slowly and there's no surprises along the way. And then for selected finalists, we engage a professional organization to conduct a complete criminal, civil litigation, social security, sex offender, motor vehicle record check, and verification of educational degrees, and no additional fee. So that's also a good, important last check.
Perfect, Steve. Thank you. And as he said, there really should be no surprises in the school business. And once we get down to that stage, we'll work with you to help you select the candidates that you want to interview. More than likely, depending on the number of applicants and how we filter them, we'll bring you anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 applicants that we think fit the profile that we've developed utilizing the information we've gotten from board members, from your stakeholders, from your community, from the 31 characteristics survey. We'll use all that to filter that down to 8 or 10. And then we'll bring that information to you at that time in a separate board meeting. We'll also provide kind of one-way video interviews where you'll just get to get a sense of the candidates and the applicants and how they present themselves. Typically, they're pretty set questions of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background. But if we needed to add a specific question to your district, such as, how do you handle the challenges of growth and renovations and resizing campuses, we can do that as well to have them to, kind of give you their initial thoughts on that. But really, it just lets you get a feel for the person. Then we'll work with you with a consensus building matrix. It's a scoring instrument whereby you compare candidates to each other, and it's kind of fun to see how the top candidates bubble up to the top during that. It's not something, if you say, wow, I see how that matrix worked, but I really like this candidate, we go back to it's your search, and we're going to work to facilitate the search to meet your needs. But we'll help you reach consensus. We'll help you organize those semifinal and final interviews. We'll work with you on interview questions, obviously layering in some questions that you may have that may be very district specific. Obviously, we have a bank of questions that we've used over the years that we're happy to use for you and with you. And with that really is the end of our 10 slides. But you can kind of see the process overview. We've been in business for a long time. We have a vast network of associates across the country who help us identify and recruit applicants and candidates. As you can imagine, you would like to find somebody who's not looking to leave their current situation necessarily, that they're happy there, the board's happy there, the community's happy there. But we hope that through building this profile of your district, that they can see the great things that you've got going on, that will entice them to come to visit with you about working in your district. And again, you can see the overview there. So for time's sake, we appreciate the opportunity to present. And now we will stop and answer questions.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that presentation and all the great information that was in there. And thank you so much for the time that you spent researching our own district so that you were familiar with our promise and all of that. I just want you to know that's noted. All right, so we will do this again like we have the first 2 times. And I will go ahead and start the time and start with the first question. Some of your proposal does not align to Nevada open meeting law. How will you ensure you become familiar with the state laws we must follow?
Sure. I'll touch on that. Steve, you may want to chime in. We work in, I think, 48 states, across the country. And we understand that there are various laws and they change from state to state. In Texas, where I'm at, candidates are very well protected. We just did Broward County Public Schools in Florida that considers themselves a sunshine state. Michigan is a sunshine state. We're wrapping up a search there. Arizona has very unique laws. And so we'll work with your staff, or if you have district council, your HR department, to make sure that we are complying with all those state and local regulations. We'll put in the time and energy to make sure that happens. Thank you very much. Trustee Westlake.
Thank you, President Smith. Thank you all for being here. It is very much appreciated. I appreciate the screening for driver's licenses and things that are put out on Facebook, but how would you screen and plan to identify conflicts of interests applicants may have, such as other commitments, things that's not going to come up really on probably this normal screening that you do, but things that would take away the support of a new hired superintendent for our district with commitments elsewhere?
Sure. That's a great question. Steve, do you want to touch that? Do you want me to take it?
Sure. Well, I'll touch on that. I know that's one of the first things we do when we start researching candidates, as we call them, when we have a phone interview with them, and we ask them specifically, are there things we need to know about your application that are going to be, that are going to impact this search? And those examples you gave would certainly be some of them. And then every reference check that we make would basically ask the same question: is there anything we need to know? And that generally surfaces those issues, and that's something we're going to be looking for.
Thank you. May I also add, in my experience with this process, the community outreach part really elevates that information swiftly and quickly. And because community will always ask those questions, and they're coming from a different angle, and so you get to it very fast.
Okay. Thank you very much. Love the glasses.
And I would add to that, not only do we check kind of on the page references, but the nice thing about having dozens and dozens of associates across the country is it's a small business. It's a small fraternity of school leadership. And, we all hear things, and I'll get calls from one of our associates in Pennsylvania about a search that I'm doing in Kansas about, hey, have you looked into this? Have you heard this? And so we all network together very, very well.
Well, thank you so much. All right, I don't see any other lights on. So I want to say thank you for such a fantastic and thorough presentation and for staying within the timeline. This was very, very informative. All right, so
Absolutely. Well,
thank you so much, and thank you to all of the presenters from Rain Associates.
thank you. Have a great meeting.
You as well. All
Thank you.
right. So team, we've been at it for a while. We have also received a few messages from the community specifically related to this item, which is item 2.02 in a special meeting of the Washoe County School Board of Trustees. So I'm going to go ahead now at 11:32 and call for a 10-minute recess while we review those emails, take a break, and then come back, and we will immediately open with public comment. Thank you. All right, everyone. It is 11:44 a.m. on Tuesday, January 23rd, and this is a special meeting of the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees. We concluded the meeting in the first portion before the recess during item 2.02 after the completion of 3 presentations from potential proposers. And now we bring ourselves back to this item 2.02, which is in progress, and move forward with the public comment portion of this item for potential action. JJ, do we have any public comment?
Todd Bailey.
Hi, Mr. Bailey. Welcome again.
Good morning. Madam President, respectfully and with urgency, table this item until February 3rd. Your rush to complete this item in this meeting is giving off an appearance of impropriety. Okay? There have been public comments by trustees that the Ethics Commission would be interested in. It indicates polling has gone on. You have 2 trustees here who have publicly expressed that they were not included on the broader discussion. I appreciate the fact that you released that information just last week, but I cannot remember a time in this board's history where you have had less than 20 minutes to consider each of these candidates and then rush to a decision. I just don't remember that, except during superintendent searches. So I strongly urge you, it's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to slow down the process. It's not going to hurt the people who are applying. It's not going to hurt the trustees. It's not going to hurt the public. It's going to give us all a chance to consider and digest what you've done today. It doesn't hurt anybody to wait till February 3rd, and that is my recommendation. Some of the questions for the firms is, which one of these firms have had any involvement with Washoe County School District in the past, and what was that? Okay, I'd like to know that. Which individuals in those firms have had any previous relationship with anybody in Washoe County School District? Professional, personal, unknown? Okay, let's get that disclosed. I didn't hear any of that today. No superintendent candidate that is in any way associated with Broad School of Superintendents. Absolutely not. Not even a workshop. If a superintendent has done that, even a Zoom meeting, they can't work here. And lastly, if you're a superintendent search firm and you're having trouble with the technical aspects of a Zoom interview, listen, this school district is technology rich. We've spent so much money on technology. You can't walk in here and say, oh yeah, we can find the superintendent, and then have trouble with your Zoom interview. Frankly, all 3 of them were very underwhelming. It's like Superintendent Search Firm, episode 20. It's the same thing we hear every time. There was nothing remarkable about it. And lastly, my gosh, you didn't even show up. Nobody flew in. Nobody flew in, and so we could shake their hand and look them in the eye. No, madam, table this decision until February 3rd. Let us consider what you're proposing. Let us sleep on it. It doesn't hurt anybody. But to move forward today,
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
that's a problem.
We appreciate your time.
Gordon Gossage.
Hi, Mr. Gossage. Welcome.
For the record, Gordon Gossage for Genesis Reno. And I would say in the opposite vein, to me it's very obvious why HYA is the #1 search firm for school superintendents. You know, they were quite impressive in 2 ways. One was the people were quite good, and the second was they really do seem to have a system down. You know, the detail on their presentation really showed that they understand what the different steps are. I thought the dashboard they have that will allow you 24/7 to look at what the information is there is great. You know, really makes a lot of sense. And I guess I'd also like to react a little bit to Dr. Nicolette's statement about only wanting to meet people who know Reno. I have to tell you, Reno is not well known in this country. And we've been growing very quickly. And that's actually a good thing. People often ask, well, what's in it for people who've lived here for generations? Well, what's in it for people who've lived here for generations is we can now, because of our growth and our reputation, we can get very, very high quality people who otherwise wouldn't know about us. So that's why we need a national search. Just to give you an idea how we've changed, we only entered the top 100 metro areas recently. In 2020, we were number 88. In 2022, we're number 73. And it's because people like living here. I moved here for a reason. And so what we want to do is we have a firm that goes out there and finds the best of the best across the whole country and then tells them this is a real opportunity. And yes, it is. You know, Dr. Nicolette, it is a sales job to get people to come to a new place. You know, it is. And they do need to understand that we're complex. And I like that you brought up that, you know, when you hear urban, it's kind of like, is Washoe County urban? No, it's not. You know, that's why I always tell people to get out of, when they visit here, to get out of the McCarran Ring and go into the North Valleys, you know, and because that's a lot of what Washoe County is. But I think a good search firm, they can't do it in their 15-minute presentation, but a good search firm will learn what we're all about and what that mix is between, you know, people like some of you who've been here for generations and people like me who've been here for 7 years. So given what I heard, and I was embarrassed for the inability to use the technology, I would urge you to pick HYA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gossage.
That's all I have.
All right, so I will bring it back here to this dais. So we've all had the opportunity to answer or get questions answered by these potential proposers. So certainly this is our time for dialogue. But at this point, having heard from everyone, having had the opportunity to ask questions, gather information, it may be a good time to consider stating preferences, the things that jumped out at you, as we consider if we'll be moving towards an action. And we'll go ahead and open with Vice President Mayberry.
Thank you. The Vice President is still new. I'm waiting for you. Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Certainly all three of them, I think, had the knowledge, skills, and abilities, no doubt. I think for me, my top choice is McPherson and Jacobson. That was the second firm that we listened to. And I mean, I think from my perspective, I really liked their retention record on superintendents, their ability, the bandwidth they have, and the contacts they have across the country. I was a little intrigued with their depth of their background checks, and you know, this idea where they ask some of the candidates contacts, you know, for other contacts, and then they sort of do this second, third removed process. It's for me, I also appreciated the level of confidence they had and the authenticity. I felt that they were very honest and forthright in areas where they may not be able to deliver certain things, and certainly didn't over-deliver. And I thought there was some over-delivery of some of the other two firms. I think just in broad strokes, that's what comes to my mind initially. I will say this to my colleagues around the aisle: it's just anecdotally, and this, not looking for any feedback on this, but I am a little concerned about the public input process, rather who does it, because I think that there's somewhat of a potential to burnout. You know, we've done this process already with the superintendent. It feels like it was a couple months ago. We also had the facility modernization plan. We had the strategic plan. There's been other committees that the previous superintendent had used to compile feedback. So that does weigh heavily on my mind, and McPherson and Jacobson did note this notion to sort of customize the process. And so that's something that's very interesting to me. Certainly public input and feedback is important, but I think a lot of the data is already there, and I don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel. So those are my thoughts initially, Madam President. I hope that helps and gives you a good place to kick off.
It does. Thank you so much. Let's continue on with Trustee Nicolette.
Oh, yes, thank you. I noted a couple things. I perused these very deeply, lots of notes, and I appreciate the submissions. Thank you for that. One of the things I noted was that not a one of these referenced something that's extremely important in Nevada, and that's NRS 241 open meeting law. It is huge. I thought that they did not pay as much attention as I had hoped to doing their homework, specifically to Nevada and Washoe County School District. That is a red flag for me. I will tell you that McPherson, out of the three, even though my understanding is it wasn't a must, but it was a should, did not attach their addendum number 1, questions and answers. That showed me shoddy work. It's not the kind of company I want to spend. How much money were they? $80,000, $60,000. Thank you, $60,000 when you don't even attach a form, a simple form that we request you attach. That's shoddy work. I will stick with the not being specific to the work of Washoe County School District, and NRS 241 is a reason for me to reject all of them. And I listened very carefully, and I really appreciated all of the questions. They were excellent. Thank you for that. But I think the work was standard. It was nothing special.
Thank you, Trustee Nicolette. If I could ask either Ms. Shum or Ms. Weir or both of you to come up and address the point about the addendum, I think that would be helpful. Or Andrea. Okay. So I apologize. I will redirect that to Ms. Sullivan to see if you can shed some light on the addendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Sullivan, Director of Procurement and Contracts, for the record. Yes, we allow for a question and answer period, and when that question and answer period is over, we publish all the questions and answers publicly so that everybody can see every question that was asked and every answer that's provided. In this case, we had 2 questions, and they were very minor in their nature. One asked if an out-of-state firm could submit, and one asked if we had limited them to 20 pages in their proposal, and one asked if they could do 20 pages plus their resume. So that was the extent of the questions asked during the process. We asked them to sign it and submit it back with their proposal. It is a request. It was not a requirement of the RFP. They did not submit theirs. The other 2 firms did submit theirs. It does say on that form, if you don't, you could be rejected, but because it wasn't required and we said we requested, and there was nothing substantial changed in the RFP, I didn't feel the need to reject them for not returning it. So that's how that was.
All right. So and that was really helpful. It was a great question, fantastic observation by Trustee Nicolette. Appreciate the clarification, but it wasn't like a firm requirement, to be clear.
It was not a firm requirement.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I can personally attest that Trustee Nicolette was absolutely doing her homework over this, and we always appreciate her for that, so thank you. Trustee Westlake, followed by Clerk Rodriguez, and then I'll jump in.
Okay. Thank you, President Smith. This is a question for our I have actually 2 questions for our lovely ladies and then just a comment. The first question, and I could be completely wrong here, but my eyes were actually bleeding after reading every single word of the attachments and the resumes and how their scope would proceed in this process. But I thought I saw somewhere where it said that, and it could be something else that I'm mixing up, somewhere that it said none of the three vendors have any association or past association with our district. Am I mistaken? Was I reading that somewhere else?
We did ask them to put in their proposals to state if they had any sort of conflicts of interest. So some disclose certain things, but I just don't have them all in front of me or committed to my memory either to know if they all address that or not. But we did ask them in their proposal to identify any potential conflicts of interest they might have.
Was in the last 10 years, can you think of anything where we've had any contact directly with any of these three companies?
I think in the last search, two of these firms, or two of the firms that are in front of you today, did submit proposals. But to my knowledge, I've been here 16 years. To my knowledge, I don't believe off the top of my head that we've actually contracted with these firms for superintendents.
Thank you. Good to know. Okay, so then,
Trustee Westlake, I just want to add one additional thing to that if I can. Katie Louise Weir for the record. We did review 5 proposals prior to the 3 finalists you have today. One of the proposals we did not bring forward, there was someone on one of those firms who was a former employee in human resources for Washoe County School District. So we did thoroughly review and discuss any potential conflicts of interest with all 5. So that gives you an example of a discussion from another vendor, not one of the 3 finalists who came forward today.
Thank you for your diligence, because we don't want any impropriety there. The other thing is just a comment. I think it is very important for our board to make sure we direct whatever vendor we choose. They're giving kind of a broad stroke from what I'm seeing, and then they will customize it. So I think we need to be very explicit. We have to do our homework. We need to make sure it is very crystal clear about the open meeting laws and what we specifically are looking for candidates. So I mean, I think that's more important, honestly, than our choice. It's how we direct our choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Just, continue discussion with my colleagues. I would say, all 3 of these vendors, excuse me, firms are impressive on paper, but I will say, and speaking a little bit here as a father, McPherson and Jacobson, their retention rate of their candidates is extremely impressive to me. And I know all of us community members I know we hear a lot, there's been a lot of turnover with our superintendents over the recent years. And I'll be honest, this one slide just really stood out to me and is extremely impressive. And I do feel that we owe it to our community to have a sense of stability and consistency here. So. While the other firms are impressive in their own ways too, I will say McPherson and Jacobson with their retention rate is really leading to me. So I'm in favor of number 3, and I will agree with Trustee Westlake and Trustee Dye. I want to see some local talent really be a priority for this board this year. Me personally, just speaking, as one trustee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll jump in now. So very similar to Trustee Nicolette, in reading the proposals and the presentations in advance, my mind was very open. I really didn't know which one I had a preference for, but the value of the narrative presentation changed that for me. And I very much appreciate the 3 proposers that came forward. There were a few things that rose to the top for McPherson for me. One is that they control their cost. They have fewer add-ons, which I would consider to be basic services. So I appreciated the cost aspect of it. They really stressed customization, and so on that note, I'd like to echo what Trustee Westlake said, which is this is our responsibility. So we are choosing potentially a partner that will do the work that this board directs them to do, including engaging in the stakeholders. But make no mistake that this is our process, and we will dictate it the way that we see fit in service to our community, children, and staff. And that's where the potential meeting on February 2nd comes in, where we really state all of those things. I did enjoy that they really talked about their urban board experience, but that they have a rural heart. And so that really reflects the type of district that we are here in Washoe County. But it was the solid answer. And then I will also note that they were the only ones that related to the question of Nevada open meeting law, said that they understood that they may need to retain and receive counsel from their own local counsel here. Just as a reminder, the district's legal team does not work for the vendors that we choose. That is their own responsibility. And so I do appreciate the way that McPherson answered that question. So those are my thoughts on that. Trustee Church?
Thank you. I'll be very brief. If it was up to me, I'd send it back to formal RFP, not an informal, to cast a wider net. That would be if it was up to me. So I agree a lot with Dr. Nicolette on what she said. I believe Mr. Bailey, did I pronounce that right? Extremely well spoken. You were very much on point, as well as a great public speaker. I don't know what you do for a living, but great public speaker. But I really appreciated those comments, and I think we are going to get red schools no matter what. During the time, we had a ton of public comment. Some of it relates to later today. But I had a comment from somebody that I barely know that said there's a new company in town, local superintendent from a Nevada district, just on his or her own, doing exactly this. And I'm like, you know, they have no track record, but I'd love to get them to do an RFP because well, let me backtrack. I'll explain why. Because when I did a search for some different things, but school superintendent, the same ads, the same opening, on Indeed, on Monster, whatever it's called, on schoolsuperintendents.com, I mean, it's just, they're everywhere. So regardless of whatever firm you take, they're going to post everywhere. And if you're really looking for a job, you're going to know where to search on those various sites. So you could hire somebody probably for $5,000 and you're going to get almost the exact same results. So all that said, I'm just not comfortable with any of them. I agree with Dr. Nicolette, but we'll let the cards fall where they do.
Thank you, Trustee Church. Quick question, good point of clarification on an informal versus a formal RFP. With a formal RFP, do we have to go with whoever the committee is that shit?
It's a good question. I've actually not conducted an RFP where the board makes a decision. And so we felt it was best in this situation to keep it informal, which is that they don't have to submit a sealed proposal, and we didn't conduct a public bid opening. But we advertised in all the same places that we would have advertised this formally if we had done a formal RFP. So to me, the outreach was the same, and so everybody had the absolute same opportunity. Sometimes in the procurement world, particularly when we're buying goods, and we only have to do a quote, we don't have to do a formal solicitation, we just go out and ask specific companies to submit a quote. In this case, we did not do that. We advertised in all the same places and opens it up to everybody in the nation to have submitted a proposal. And so we took the proposals, we evaluated them, we discussed them thoroughly, we looked at everything we had asked to be submitted and scored, the committee scored accordingly, and then brought you the finalists. And we just felt like keeping it in this informal manner was a better way to deliver to you and for you to make the final decision. Typically, when we do a formal RFP, the committee is making the decision, and we make a recommendation of one firm to the board.
Thank you. That's important information. I appreciate it. Trustee Woodley.
President, oh, sorry.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to add one more thing to that, President Smith. So sorry. Upon the public announcement of Superintendent Enfield's resignation, we did start already receiving information from vendors who were interested. So Andrea also made sure that she contacted any vendor who had reached out to any of you or our team or her team or communications, or, you know, there were some vendors prior to even a discussion of a potential RFP who said, oh, Dr. Enfield is moving on to another opportunity. There is potentially an opening at Washoe County School District. So anybody who had proactively reached out to us, we also made sure they got all the information for the RFP as well.
That is very helpful. Thank you so much for bringing that to the conversation. Trustee Woodley.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, so I'll start with HYA. They appear to be a big national firm. I did appreciate their 80 years of experience collectively with their presenters. The fact they had experience with such big communities as Atlanta, Boston, Houston, etc. I also like their portal with the access for 24/7 access for board members, except we wouldn't be able to take advantage of that portal if we want to be in compliance with NRS. So that value really wouldn't be of much value to us. And then I did have concern with regards to their price menu, for lack of a better term, starting off at $68,000, and then with all the extra add-ons, for some reason, I just felt like this can easily turn into $100K very easily. I did appreciate their quote, "Our job is to make your job difficult," and picking the right candidate, but I don't want to pay $100K for that. So it led me to really appreciate McPherson and Jacobson. I did appreciate their 100-year collective experience in education with their presenters. I did like their quote where they stated, "We know people that know people that know people," with regards to our request on how would you do your background checks. That is something good to know, because we're not just looking at whatever printouts we can get from different agencies, but rather actually what we call, on the street actual intelligence, so we appreciate that, and we need that. And then, of course, I like their numbers. I like their success rate, the 70, the 50, the 40. That is the biggest question I get from constituents is, when are we going to be able to keep someone for a significant amount of time? So I'm very cognizant of that, as I'm sure the rest of you are as well. And then lastly, I do appreciate their client satisfaction. As far as the 2-year, they were the only ones that were pretty upfront and straightforward, in which it states, for whatever reason. If the candidate leaves for whatever reason, the other two consultants, there was some caveats in there. If there's the majority of the board still on the board, and yeah. So I really did like, that's how confident it appeared to me that they are with their success rate. So with all that being said, McPherson and Jacobson will be my favorite. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Woodley, and thank you for everyone for your comments. Clerk Rodriguez?
I'm ready to make a motion and see where it lies. I move that the Board of Trustees authorize the staff to enter into a contract with McPherson and Jacob in support of the superintendent search process, not to exceed the total amount of $100,000.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Clerk Rodriguez, seconded by Vice President Mayberry. Just as a quick clarification for anyone that's following along or who may report on this, the motion as it stands is for a contract not to exceed a total value of $100,000, but if anybody looks at the proposals, you'll see that the amounts are all less than that, so I just want to point that out as a moment of clarification. Seeing no other lights on for further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay.
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 All right, motion carries 5-2. Thank you so much, colleagues. This was a great discussion and some very valid points, and we all definitely learned a lot, and I know our community learned a lot as well, too. So thank you very much to all three of our proposers, and thank you very much to McPherson and Jacobson, LLC, since it appears that we will be moving forward with that. Thank you. Now we go ahead and we close item 2.02, and we will now close all of section 2 along with that and bring us to item 3.01, the first item in our third section, and this is our closing public comment. JJ, do we have any closing public comment?
Todd Bailey.
Hi, Mr. Bailey, welcome.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to make one thing clear here today, that there is no one person that I consider at fault here or doing something wrong. Staff, you did a great job. Okay, everybody, you did a great job. No criticism of what staff did here. Board, same thing. I know over half of you, you're all great people. You have a history of public service. It is not about the people. This is about the structure of the process, okay? This is going to be the most important superintendent selection process in the district's history. There are 65 people who are watching every decision you're making, and they are going to have a debate about that next year. The superintendent graduation rate, that's what you're ultimately responsible for. Yes, students are important, but your job is superintendents who do their homework and graduate their contract. The superintendent graduation rate for Washoe County is less than 17%. Only 1 out of 6 of the previous superintendents has been successful. She's sitting right there. It's time to reset Nevada. We need to make a change in Nevada where superintendents of school districts are elected. That is the only way you're going to get the kind of tenure that you're after, the kind of dedication, okay? We got lucky with 1, but unless we elect superintendents, we're just going to get the same old thing that we just heard. So I don't know if that's a change to NRS 386 or 388. There's experts who can determine that. Now, I know some of you out there are thinking, good luck. Good luck. Well, I suggest you take a look at this year's ballot, because that's where you're going to see question 1, where they are going to take that power away from the Board of Regents at the university system and give it to somebody else. Okay? So that's called SJR 7 in the last legislative session. I'm sure legislators would be open to letting the people decide this issue if they can't make it themselves. It's time to reset Nevada. It's time to elect superintendents in the state. Keep your eye on resetnevada.com, because that's going to be a place where this is going to happen. I guarantee it. I got a couple of housekeeping items that I think are important. You've got a couple of portraits out there at the front door of superintendents who were terminated with prejudice. Why? Why are the people who hurt this district at the front door with a smiling picture like they did something right? They didn't, okay? 2 superintendents are up there that should not be, and you are glorifying failure. Take them down immediately, please. And lastly, you should instruct staff to stop referring to this board in documents as bots. I mean, the optics of that is terrible. Do you know what a bot is? It's a robot on the internet. It's not a school board of trustees. Thank you.
Mr. Bailey.
That's all I have.
All right. Just as a reminder to everyone that the notes that you took for that item 2.02, we are going to be turning those in, so let's make sure that those are all separated out. And now we're going to close item 3.01 and bring us to item 3.02. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, no worries.
Trustee Nicolette?
And I would like to make a copy of my notes. They're great for memory before I turn them in.
Absolutely. There's more great ideas. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. So that brings us to item 3.02, the adjournment of this meeting at 12:18 p.m. Thank you very much.